Glee was Fox's hit musical dramedy that aired for the first time in 2009 and became a pop cultural phenomenon. The show continues to live on and sparks discussions and debates that never seem to reach middle ground except for everyone agreeing on Mr. Shu doing some questionable things on the show. Now, I've gone through a few characters, and before you ask, yes, I plan on doing many more, but as I sit here analyzing characters and how they affected the story, I started to wonder the inverse. How are the characters affected by the show itself? And how was the show affected by the characters? I know the answer seems obvious and it's pretty simple, but Glee, like many other shows, is one that hasn't always been consistent in its way of storytelling, and that has affected some of the characters as well as storylines. So let's get into it. But before, let's talk about today's sponsor. Okay, so I have something really fun to share with you today. So have you ever wished for a game that could transport you into a world of cozy mystery, small town gossip, and mouth-watering baked goods? Well, look no further, because Love and Pies is here to deliver just that. Love and Pies is a captivating merge-to-mobile game that lets you step into the shoes of Amelia Green, a single mom who embarks on a journey to restore her family cafe after a rough divorce. As you combine resources to create delicious baked goods, serve customers, and unravel dark family secrets, you'll be drawn into a story that blends elements of sitcom, telenovela, and cozy mystery with a dash of humor. What I love about Love and Pies is the perfect escape it provides from our daily routines. It's the ultimate me time experience where you can immerse yourself in the wholesome-ish world of Appleton and take a well-deserved break. Plus, the game offers so much more than just baking. You'll meet a wonderful cast of diverse characters, challenge yourself in various events and competitions, and put your creativity to the test when customizing and decorating your world. The best part, Love and Pies is free to download. So if you're a mystery, romance, loving individual who enjoys juicy secrets, small town gossip, and a touch of drama, you absolutely won't wanna miss out on this captivating game. A big thank you to Trail Mix for sponsoring this video. You can show your support by downloading Love and Pies using the link down below. Get ready to embark on a delightful adventure filled with intrigue, romance, and of course, lots of delicious pies. Thank you to Trail Mix for sponsoring this video.
Some people say I'm an overachiever, but I think they're just jealous. My mom always tells me I'm different, special. And if you look at all the things I've accomplished so far, I think you'd have to agree.
This movie is called Election. You might have seen it before, or maybe you've never heard of it, but if you've seen both the Glee pilot and this movie, then you've most certainly noticed some similarities. The origins of Glee come from a whole lot of places, which I'll get into in a minute, but first I want to talk about the pilot, which in a way I believe was the most significant selling point and the most important factor in making all of this happen. Election and Glee are both set in Midwestern America. Our protagonists have either gone through something significant or are about to be going through something major. Both shows discuss the darkness of high school and how broken the system is, where most high school peers will tear each other down to get to where they need to be or simply just to survive, where it gets so bad for some people that they eventually just have to leave, and where it even gets messier is when the adults in the lives of these children are supposed to support them. They instead resort to dirty tricks to advance their own agendas. Both use black comedy to convey their stories, but where the story diverges is in the outcome and the takeaway messages of the story. The Pilot of Glee is easily one of the greatest pilots on TV, where other television pilots resulted in steady growths over the rest of their series. Some argue that Glee actually dropped the ball after its pilot. I disagree with that though. I think that where the Glee pilot excelled was being an excellent standalone episode that captured the essence of what the show would convey over the following 6 seasons, in lesser detail of course, but nonetheless. At the time of its release, Glee brought a fresh and innovative concept to the television landscape. While there had been musical TV shows before Glee, Glee's focus on a high school show choir and its blend of comedy, drama, and music made it a standout from other programs. The pilot effectively showcased this unique concept and piqued the interest of the audience. The pilot did a fantastic job of introducing the main characters and their individual struggles, from Rachel's ambition and drive to be a star, to Finn's struggle with his identity as a jock and a singer, to Will's passion for reviving the Glee Club. The pilot set the stage for the characters' development throughout the series. It also introduced the audience to the complex dynamics between the characters, which would continue to evolve over the seasons. One of the key strengths of the Glee pilot was its ability to evoke an emotional response from the viewers. The episode touched on themes like acceptance, belonging, and self-discovery, which resonated with the audiences of all ages. The scene where the Glee Club members come together to perform Don't Stop Believing is particularly powerful and serves as an iconic moment in the show's history. The pilot managed to tell a compelling, self-contained story while also setting the stage for the series' overarching narrative. The balance between the Glee Club's quest for success, the characters' personal struggles, and the tension between the adult and student storylines was handled effectively, making the episode engaging and entertaining from start to finish. A major factor that contributed to Glee's pilot success was the quality of the music and performances. The episodes featured a mix of classical and contemporary songs, showcasing the show's commitment to musical diversity. Additionally, the cast's incredible talent and chemistry were evident from the beginning, making the musical numbers both entertaining and emotionally impactful. The Glee pilot struck a chord with viewers and critics alike, quickly becoming a cultural phenomenon. It ignited a renewed interest in show choirs and performing arts, demonstrating the power of television to influence and inspire. The pilot of Glee was one of the best episodes because it was a combined effort between Ryan, Brad, and Ian. And once you get familiar with each of their writing styles, you'll be able to see what each of them bring to the table. They were essentially known as the DNA of Glee, also famously coined RIB. Firstly, let's tackle Mr. Fan favorite Ryan Murphy. So Ryan is the one who's most famously referred to when people talk about Glee. The Ryan Murphy discourse is actually such a funny one because he's pissed off so much of the fandom that pretty much everything wrong with Glee is blamed on him, when in reality he was only a third of the equation without factoring in the extra writers and producers added in the later seasons. That's not to say that he wouldn't have single-handedly ruined Glee anyway. I mean, he's notorious for having great early seasons with very painful drop-offs, but that's beside the point here. I want to focus more on what he brought when it was at its best, because you may not like him, but his acute involvement in the first two seasons was one of the very reasons why they were so great. Beyond Glee, he's known for his versatility and ability to tackle wide ranges of genres and themes in his writing. In Glee, he was responsible for establishing the show's unique blend of comedy, drama, and music. I'm sure you've heard this before, but he was often referred to as a musical encyclopedia. His episodes often addressed complex issues such as sexuality, identity, and social acceptance, basically an after-school special style, while also maintaining a humorous and upbeat tone. Murphy's episodes frequently featured elaborate musical numbers and high-stake emotional moments, reflecting his penchant for spectacle and strong character development. He wrote episodes such as Acapellas, where Kurt first comes out, Wheels, which highlighted the struggles Artie went through, Laryngitis, which in hindsight was an odd episode, but still an attempt to shine the light on disabilities, and most famously the episode Theatricality, which had that very defining Kurt, Burt, and Finn scene. When looking at media, most of the time when you saw Ryan, there was Brad Falchuk right beside him. They created great shows together both before and after Glee and are still working together. I always had the vibe that Brad was the less credited version of Ryan Murphy. As I mentioned before, even though within the Glee community, Rib is very well known to many outsiders, Ryan is a lot of the times solely credited for the show and other ones such as Scream Queens, Nip Tuck, American Horror Story, and you get the point. All of this to say that Brad deserves his flowers too, at least in my opinion. In terms of writing, Brad Falchuk's writing brought a grounded emotional core to Glee. He was responsible for developing many of the show's heartfelt storylines and character arcs, focusing on themes like love, friendship, and personal growth. Project's episodes often explored the emotional complexities and vulnerabilities of the characters, delving into their backstories and motivations. His writing style leaned towards drama and realism, providing a solid foundation for the show's more fantastical and comedic elements. Some examples of his episodes are Throwdown, Sectionals, and Journey to Regionals, which highlighted the importance of teamwork, friendship, and personal growth. Of course, the last part of the trifecta wouldn't and actually couldn't be complete without Ian Brennan himself. He was the originator of the Glee script, so this specific show probably wouldn't have happened without him at all. On the show, Ian Brennan's writing style often focused on the satirical and comedic elements of Glee. He had a knack for creating witty dialogue and poking fun at various aspects of high school life, including cliques, stereotypes, and competitive nature of school clubs. Brennan's episodes tended to include lighter storylines and humorous situations, which served as a counterbalance to some of the more dramatic and emotional moments in the series. He also contributed to the development of memorable, quirky characters that made the show stand out. Some of his episodes included Roads Not Taken, Hairography, Duets, Blame It on the Alcohol. So basically, some of the wildest Glee episodes. They each wrote episodes, but at the end, there was always some input from all three. That's why even in some of Brad's or Ryan's more emotional episodes, you'd get those very wild and very much iconic Sue Sylvester monologues, for example. This trio was a perfect one, like no arguments needed. There has rarely been a show or any piece of media for that matter that so easily makes me crack up alone in the dark and then ugly cry a few minutes later in a rinse and repeat cycle like the show has. And this especially happened within the first 2 seasons, and the correlation is rib. One of the most significant themes in Glee is the idea of accepting oneself and others regardless of their background, appearance, or personal struggles. The show features a diverse group of characters who all face different challenges, whether it's sexual orientation, race, physical disabilities, or body image. Glee teaches us that everyone deserves love and acceptance, and it's crucial to embrace our own unique qualities. The theme is evident in storylines such as Kurt's coming out as gay, Mercedes, Rachel, and Quinn dealing with body image issues, and Artie coming to terms with his disability. As the characters learn to accept themselves and each other, they grow stronger and more supportive as a group. Glee also emphasizes the power of camaraderie and working together. The members of the Glee Club come from various social circles and backgrounds, but they all learn to put aside their differences and work together as a team. Throughout the show, we see them face numerous challenges and conflicts, but they always come together and support and uplift one another. This theme is at the heart of Glee, as friendship and bonds formed within the Glee Club play a crucial role in the characters' personal growths and the group's success. Another major theme in Glee is the idea of overcoming obstacles and bouncing back from hardships. Each character faces their own set of challenges, whether it's personal issues, family conflicts, or problems at school. They all learn to persevere and stay resilient in the face of adversity. The show teaches the viewers that we can overcome any obstacle if we stay strong and believe in ourselves. The theme is especially evident in storylines like Quinn's teenage pregnancy. Throughout the series, the characters grapple with discovering and defining their own identities. They face various dilemmas and conflicts related to their sexuality, career aspirations, and personal values. Glee highlighted the importance of staying true to oneself and following one's dreams, even when faced with opposition or uncertainty. Storylines like Santana's journey in accepting her sexuality, Rachel's struggles to balance her career and personal life, and Kurt's quest to find his place in the world all exemplify this theme. Glee doesn't shy away from addressing real world issues such as bullying, mental health, addiction, and teenage pregnancies. By incorporating these issues into the storylines, the show tried to raise awareness and encourage discussions about important topics. For example, again, the show tackled issues of bullying with characters like Kurt facing harassment because of his orientation, or Rachel simply by existing, and even the Glee Club itself being targeted by other students. These storylines foster empathy and understanding amongst viewers and encourage conversations about complex social issues. Glee explores various romantic relationships both within the Glee Club and outside of it. In the earlier seasons, these relationships often served as a backdrop to the characters' personal growths and development as they navigated the ups and downs of love, heartbreak, and commitment. The show also delved into the complexities of modern relationships, touching on issues like infidelity, long-distance relationships, and challenges faced by LGBTQ plus couples. By presenting a wide range of romantic relationships, Glee showcased the many different forms that love can take and highlighted the importance of communication and trust in maintaining healthy relationships. Many of the characters on Glee were driven by their dreams and aspirations, whether it was Rachel's desire to become a Broadway star or Will's passion for reviving the Glee Club. The show emphasized the importance of pursuing one's dreams, even at the face of uncertainty. Throughout the series, the characters learned valuable lessons about dedication, perseverance, and sacrifices that come with chasing their goals. Glee also showcased the incredible impact that music and arts could have in people's lives. The show demonstrated how music could bring people together, help them express their emotions, and even change their lives for the better. Through song and dance, the characters were able to explore their feelings, connect with one another, and grow as individuals. Glee is known for its sharp wit and satirical humor, often poking fun at pop culture, high school cliques, and societal norms. This element of the show served as a clever form of societal commentary while also providing comic relief amidst the serious storylines. By incorporating humor and satire, Glee kept the show engaging and entertaining while also encouraging viewers to reflect on the absurdities of modern life and question the status quo. Glee was a rich and multifaceted show that tackled a wide range of themes and issues throughout its run. The themes played a crucial role in shaping the story and characters, as well as resonated with viewers on a personal level. By addressing topics like acceptance, friendship, resilience, identity, and social issues, Glee managed to create a lasting impact on its audience, providing not only entertainment, but also valuable lessons and insights into the human experience. Glee often employed inner monologues to give viewers insight into characters' thoughts, feelings, and motivations. Inner monologues helped humanize the characters, making them more relatable and engaging. The inner monologues were a clever way for the creators to show us what was going on inside the characters' heads without them outright saying it. It allowed for a more intimate connection with the characters, giving us insight into their fears and desires. This narrative style was particularly effective in a show like Glee, which dealt with a lot of sensitive and complex issues that the characters might not have been comfortable openly discussing. The inner monologues also added a layer of humor to the show. We got to hear some of the wildest things with Sue Sylvester's inner monologues. Her snarky and sarcastic commentary on events happening around her was always a source of laughter, and it helped, balance out the more serious moments on the show. The show occasionally used flashbacks to provide context and background information on the characters and their relationships. Flashbacks served as a storytelling tool to explore characters' past experiences and how they shaped their present situations. For example, flashbacks were used to reveal the history between Will and Terri, as well as the backstory of many Glee members. The use of inner monologues and flashbacks was a part of the elements that made the Glee pilot stick out so much. It was a very clear storytelling method that brought you back and forth until the entire story pieces came together and made sense. This method also makes use of time in a smart way. Most of the events taking place in the pilot might have seemed like it was over a couple of weeks, but it was just a couple of days. By using this storytelling method, you got to focus on multiple characters and getting to know just enough information about them. Glee employed a large ensemble cast, with each character having their own distinct personality, background, and story arc. This approach allowed the show to explore various themes such as acceptance, identity, and friendship through different character perspectives. The ensemble cast also provided opportunities for unique pairings and group dynamics, which helped keep the show fresh and engaging over multiple seasons. As much as the pilot was a success and garnered much attention and praise, I don't know how long the show would have lasted if it kept the same enlarged focus on Will, Rachel, and Finn, expanding the cast stories was one of the best directions that they would go in. This one's obvious, but one of Glee's most distinctive storytelling methods was its use of musical performances to advance the plot, reveal character emotions, or create memorable moments. The songs often served as a form of emotional expression, allowing the characters to communicate their feelings in a way that they couldn't through dialogue alone. The musical numbers also provided a unique form of entertainment, blending various genres and styles to appeal to a diverse audience. The show often used themed episodes to explore specific topics or pay homage to particular artists, genres, or cultural events. These episodes allowed the writers to experiment with different storytelling and musical styles while maintaining the show's overall narrative. Thematic episodes also provided opportunities for characters to grow and change as they faced new challenges and experiences related to the theme. Glee's background music often included classical and popular tunes to accentuate scenes and highlight certain themes. The background music was a very important aspect of the experience. They took classical pieces and remade them into these a cappella melodies. Some classical pieces weren't changed, like Sue's iconic O Fortuna or Mez's piano piece, in all the important emotionally defining character moments. Glee's storytelling often included meta references and humor to engage viewers and comment on the show's own tropes and cliches. The self-awareness added a layer of depth to the show as it acknowledged the inherent absurdity of some situations while treating the characters and their emotions with sincerity. The humor also served as means, to balance the show's dramatic and emotional moments, maintaining an overall tone that was both engaging and entertaining. Glee employed a variety of filming techniques to create its unique visual style. The show's cinematography evolved over the seasons, but several key elements remained more so consistent. Glee often used handheld camera work, particularly during intense emotional scenes, to create a sense of intimacy and immediacy. This technique allowed the viewer to feel more connected to the characters and their emotions. Whenever there were handheld shots, all I wanted to see were interviews. Can you imagine in an alternate universe if Glee was a mockumentary, how hilarious a Sue or Santana or hell even a Rachel interview would be? I mean, we sort of got the inner monologues that were also a different way to give us the character's perspective, but they weren't as consistent. Many of the musical numbers and dance sequences were filmed using a Steadicam, which provided smooth, fluid motion while capturing the choreography and performers' movements. This technique contributed to the polished and dynamic presentation of the musical performances. Panning and sweeping shots were used to transition between characters, emphasize important movements, or follow the action during musical numbers. These techniques helped to create a dynamic visual narrative and establish connections between characters and their surroundings. It was also used as a narrative device. Glee occasionally used rack focus, shifting between foreground and background elements to emphasize specific characters or details in a scene. This technique was useful for drawing attention to important moments or creating depth within a shot. The show employed various transition techniques to move between scenes, including crossfades, wipes, and cuts. These transitions were often used to create a sense of continuity or to highlight the passage of time. Close-ups and medium shots were frequently used to showcase the characters' emotions and reactions during both dramatic scenes and musical performances. These shots allowed viewers to connect with characters on a deeper level. Overall, the filming style of Glee combined a variety of techniques to create a dynamic and engaging visual narrative. The cinematography evolved throughout the series to accommodate changing storylines and characters while maintaining the energetic and emotional core of the show. Glee followed the weekly format in terms of storytelling. Most episodes would revolve around a weekly assignment. Glee Club meetings were officially on Thursdays, but it seems to me that either most of their so-called weekly assignments would spill over and be several days longer, or they simply would just meet up between classes or just hang in the club after schools whenever free. The production process for the music involved several steps, including song selection, arrangement, pre-recording, choreography, rehearsals, filming, and post-production. The show's creators, producers, and cast members collaborated closely to ensure that each musical number was not only entertaining but also served to advance the story and develop the characters. The show's co-creator, Ryan Murphy, was responsible for selecting all of the songs used in Glee. He strived to maintain a balance between chart hits and show tunes, aiming to provide something for everyone in each episode. Murphy believed that the song choices were integral to the script development, with each episode having a theme at its core. After writing the script, he would choose songs that helped move the story along. Glee's production team, led by Adam Anders, played a crucial role in transforming the selected songs into unique arrangements tailored to the show's narrative and characters. Anders and his team would create new arrangements, often blending different musical styles or genres to create a fresh and memorable performance. The music producers also collaborated closely with the show's choreographers and vocal coaches to ensure seamless integration between the musical and visual elements of the performances. Before the songs were performed on set, the cast members participated in pre-recording sessions with the music production team. During these sessions, the characters would work with vocal coaches to refine their performances and ensure that they were consistent with the characters' personalities and storylines. The pre-recorded tracks would then be used during filming as a reference for actors who would lip sync their recording while performing the choreography. Each musical number on Glee required a carefully planned choreography to complement the song's arrangement and the character's individual style. The show's choreographer, led by Zach Woodley, would work closely with the cast members to develop and rehearse the dance routines. Rehearsals were an essential part of the process as they allowed the actors to become comfortable with the choreography and to fine-tune their performances before filming. Apparently, this process began 6 to 8 weeks before each episode was filmed and could end as late as the day before filming began. The cast and crew of Glee were known for their intense work ethic, dedication, and stamina. The production schedule was often grueling, with long filming hours that sometimes stretched into the early hours of the next morning. The actors and production team members had to juggle multiple responsibilities, often working on 2 or 3 episodes simultaneously. This made Glee one of the most demanding television shows in the industry, both for the cast and the crew. The tight schedule and overlapping work on different episodes required a high level of organization and coordination among the various teams involved. This complex production process was made possible by dividing the cast and crew into smaller groups, each focused on specific tasks. For example, one group might have been in the recording studio, and another in dance rehearsals, and a third working on acting scenes for that day. Scenes were not filmed in chronological order, and the cast often had difficulty differentiating which scene belonged to which episode. The editing and post-production team played a crucial role in bringing everything together and creating a cohesive final product. They worked around the clock, often in shifts, to ensure that the show's tight deadlines were met. The editing team had the challenging task of piecing together the various scenes, musical number, and other elements to create a seamless narrative for each episode. Glee's demanding production process, coupled with the additional promotional activities and concert tours during the early years of the show, highlighted the tremendous dedication and hard work of the cast and crew. Despite these challenges, they consistently delivered high quality performances and engaging storylines.
Look, I know I'm just a sophomore, but I can feel the clock ticking away, and I don't want to leave high school with nothing to show for it.
You get great grades. You're a fantastic singer.
Everybody hates me.
So when you first met Rachel Berry Wright, she was a lot. I mean, in season 1, she was at her most extra. She was selfish, egotistical, and insecure. But this was also when the show was most satirical, which actually made her hilarious and ridiculous for most of the time instead of unbearable. In season 2, Rachel started at like her lowest point. She sent Sunshine to a crack house out of fear and insecurity. But the good news is that she would never do that again, and she would only go up from there, right? So throughout the second season, she went through a lot of personal drama than in season 1. like dealing with her relationship with Finn and finding out that he lied about Santana. But then after they broke up, Rachel started improving her attitude, like trying to build friendships with her fellow Glee Club members. And you know what? She started winning them over and even forming this like very interesting and unpredictable trio with Kurt and Mercedes. One of the most touching moments of that season is when Rachel won the club's MVP award and got all emotional about how much more it meant to her compared to the other awards that she received. By season 3, Rachel was mostly done with her season 1 drama and mostly focused on college and Finn. She finally also fit into the club and wasn't really an outsider anymore. After this, she graduated and seemed like a changed woman ready to leave her past behind. You know, there was the season 4 drama with like Brody and stuff and her just trying to figure out her college self, but it wasn't that bad. Well, that is until season 5 when Santana auditioned to be her understudy and funny girl and everything went berserk. We came right back to the insecure, dramatic Rachel. And as the season went on, she was just like all over the place, sometimes over the top and completely full of herself, and you know, other times a super sweet friend. We all know how season 5 ended with her quitting her dream show to film a pilot in LA. And then in season 6, it all falls apart and Rachel was forced to learn how to be a real adult. The tantrums were long gone. She started dealing with her pain in a, you know, healthier way, getting back on her feet, which she totally needed because, you know, she got the lead on a Broadway show only 6 months after graduating. She took it for granted, then lost everything. But hey, yeah, that's Rachel's journey, growing, learning, and becoming a better person. Rachel was portrayed as this, you know, super driven girl who wanted to be a star more than anything and was willing to do pretty much anything to get there. She joined the Glee Club and saw it as her chance to shine, but she was so focused on herself that she pushed everyone else away. Her craving for praise and attention obviously came from a place of loneliness, right? Before the Glee Club, she was bullied by people like Quinn, Santana, and Puck, and she didn't have any friends. So when she joined the Glee Club and had something in common with others, she hoped it would be her chance to finally be accepted. She was super protective of her voice and talents because it was all she had that she could count on. She was always on alert, worried that someone else would steal her spotlight and lose the little acceptance that she had in the Glee Club. On multiple occasions, the members didn't shy away from saying that she was annoying, and the only reason they tolerated her was because they needed her talent. Because of those fears, she would go too far, like when she sent Sunshine to that crack house or with the Glee Club when Tina got a solo. But the thing about her is that she would always feel bad and then try to make things right when she realized what was actually important. The thing is, she just really wasn't confident. I mean, I know that that's what the show tried to say she was, but she was actually really insecure, and that's what led her to do all those really dumb things. Like when she tried to get back at Finn by cheating on him with Puck. Like deep down inside, she just really had a big heart, and all she wanted was acceptance, and that's probably why she was so forgiving. You know, despite the mistreatment and all that, she still managed to forgive people who hurt her and even became friends with them. Now, I know that with some of the fandom, the issues weren't with Rachel's attitude per se, but instead with the way her character was handled. I know a lot of people hate that she got everything she wanted, and in passing also hate Mr. Shu because of his favoritism towards her. That used to piss me the f too. Like, you know, considering that Santana used to be my favorite character, it was so annoying having to tolerate Rachel. But honestly, I just reconciled the fact that even though Ryan didn't ever say it, Rachel was his star, and the way Rachel was treated by Mr. Shu was the way that Leah was treated by Ryan. And I've just made my peace with it, and since then it has just made the show much more enjoyable and easier to watch. Like if you just accept that Rachel's, you know, the central main person of the show, it just gets easier to watch. I know it sucks, but that's just the way it is.
I'm not afraid of being called a loser because I can accept that that's what I am. But I am afraid of turning my back on something that actually made me happy for the first time in my sorry life.
Finn Hudson is a character that, just like Rachel, has very strong polarizing opinions regarding him. I don't know that many people who just don't really have an opinion on him. Like, yes, they exist, of course, but just like Rachel, over the past few years, I have only come across fans that have had very strong feelings about him, whether that be good or bad. Finn's character is introduced to us as a typical all-American high school boy from a small town. Doesn't know much and is quite ignorant about most things, but he has a good heart. Finn grew up with a single mother. He never knew his dad because he passed away when he was still a baby, and we later find out that unlike what Finn thought, he didn't die in the army, but instead from drugs after being discharged from the army. Growing up, he never had any real sort of male figure to look up to. He said it himself that he felt like he needed to be the man of the house. So in high school, Finn managed to obtain popularity by being the football team quarterback as well as dating the school's cheerleading captain. So when Finn is blackmailed into joining the Glee Club by Mr. Shu, he reluctantly agrees and joins their first practice. This is the first time the school's hierarchy is challenged, and Finn does everything in his power to hide it, understandably so. When Mr. Shu announces that he's going to be leaving McKinley, Finn sees this as an opportunity to leave and goes back to his normal life. All goes well until Finn's teammates lock Artie in a porta potty, which this leads us to the moment of the show where Finn decides to break the cycle and challenge the status quo. In this scene, we get perhaps one of the most self-aware moments on the show, followed by the hopeful Don't Stop Believing rendition. Finn throughout the show was referred to as a leader, and many people have a problem with this, and I see why. To be honest, I get both sides, right? Because Finn had a lot of flaws. Plenty of them were glossed over on the show. He had some real emotional issues and showed on multiple occasions that he did not know how to control himself. He was a deeply insecure guy who feared the real world more than anything. He, more than anyone else on the show, used high school as a safety blanket. He constantly struggled between doing what was right and staying within his comfort zone, and because of that, he didn't always come through early enough for his friends. Obviously, these character flaws were written in a way where Ryan Murphy could give viewers lessons, as that was his writing style on Glee. Finn was always meant to have, a small town boy's way of thinking, and his character would learn from his mistakes and expand his idea of life and of the world through those moments. Finn's relationship with Kurt especially was always portrayed as him hesitating to do the right thing before eventually coming through. With Rachel as well, a lot of their earlier relationship was him flip-flopping on whether he could accept his feelings for her or not, which wasn't always fair to her. In the earlier seasons, he always seemed to understand her value only after someone else wanted her. But just like everything else, the writers would eventually have him come through and step up. A lot of people also dislike Finn because of how the writers struggle to make Finn take accountability for his actions, or always made them seem less serious than they were. With Quinn, for example, lots of people call him a hypocrite because he kissed Rachel in the second episode, or that he broke up with Rachel for cheating on him with Puck, but then went on to do the same thing to Sam. The thing that makes this a more complex discussion is that Finn still had the right to be angry at Quinn, right? Because not only did she treat Finn horribly regarding the pregnancy, she got pregnant by his best friend. Same with the cheating in season 2. He only started having interest in her again after she kissed him in the hallway following the halftime performance. So he didn't exactly start pursuing her for nothing. But I mean, he still had so many dick moments on the show that you just can't ignore, that he was so problematic. He's just a representation of what the writers at the time thought it was to be a good guy. I've already talked about this in my Santana analysis, but the outing situation with Santana was horribly mishandled, and honestly just a gross depiction on where the importance of which characters on the show stood. I mean, we were always told that he was this good guy, but then there are so many moments where his actions didn't quite line up. Like the way he got angry at Quinn during prom was just so unnecessary. The outbursts were just indefensible most of the time, like calling Sue's baby, or thinking that it was okay to kiss Sam. His character at the end made me sad for him. Like, he was terrified of the unknown, and his first instinct would always be to protect himself first. And I do appreciate that his character started to learn his worth and hopefully didn't pass away, feeling like he was a complete failure. Another thing I want to raise before I move on is the issue about Finn being called a leader, because I know that's something else the fandom has a lot of issues with. Listen, in all honesty, I think Finn had that constant leader label because joining the Glee Club was the turning point for most of these characters. For those who were labeled as school losers, this was their hope for something better, for acceptance. The fact that one of the cool kids wanted to be a part of the group despite what it meant about his own popularity status. Honestly, had Finn not joined the Glee Club, none of the football kids would have, and none of the cheerers would have either. Despite the fact that they fought all the time, the Glee Club became a support system for most of these kids. I'm not saying that he kept the Glee Club together or that the other members stayed for him, but he is without any argument the catalyst to bring the Glee Club truly alive. Sure, he wasn't the best singer and he was one of the worst dancers, if not the worst one. But being a leader isn't about being the best. It's about how you inspire people to keep moving forward. And his character, especially in the first season at least, demonstrated that. It wasn't as apparent in the later seasons, but that can be blamed on the writers inability to write consistently. But hey, if I'm being honest, I just personally have a soft spot for Finn, and a huge chunk of the fandom does as well. For me, it's more about Corey than Finn. It's about the energy the actor brought on the show and the charm, he gave to Finn. He had such a good way of delivering his lines, and his clueless goofiness were part of what made Finn more digestible, even for those who didn't necessarily, like him.
Sorry. I just really love you guys. You know how many Facebook friends I had before I joined Glee Club? 2. My parents.
It's fascinating how Tina's character on the show evolved so much throughout the series. She went through a complete 180 transformation from who she was at the beginning of the show to who she was at the end. The first season, Tina was incredibly shy to the point where she faked a stutter to avoid public speaking. So this quirk seemed to work for her, so she permanently adopted it as a means to dodge uncomfortable situations. Her style during the earlier seasons was a unique blend of punk, emo, goth, featuring arm warmers, fishnets, beanies, Converses, spiked shoes, ripped clothing, and colorful highlights. She was very, very late 2000s. Like, if you want to just, they all were, but Tina was just 2000s. Avril Lavigne 2000s. Anyway, yeah. So despite being timid, Tina showed genuine care for other characters, especially Artie, and was a supportive friend to most of her peers. However, she didn't always receive the same support in return. By season 2, Tina had started to express herself more and became less shy, but she still didn't have a dominant voice on the show. This likely contributed to her consistently being in the background. Even though she had become more confident in her singing abilities, Tina never completed a solo during season 2 and would often end up crying after every performance. In this season, her style also evolved as she began dressing in a more Victorian goth style, transitioning from a more tomboy look to a feminine look. And let me be honest, I thought this whole Victorian thing was horrendous, but that's just me. Okay. In season 3, Tina started to speak her mind and voice her opinions more openly. She wasn't overly loud, but she seemed to have grown into her newfound confidence. This growth was evident when she helped Mike gain confidence from his parents and, got him into dance school and played a pivotal part in Rachel's acceptance in Niata. At this point, her style completely changed again as she began dressing in a more 60s style featuring bright colors and classic highlights and curls. By season 3, she had completely abandoned her goth style, which was noticed by everyone except for the characters on the show. In the episode Props, Tina spoke up about feeling ignored by most of the people in the Glee Club over the past few years. They acted like she was exaggerating and were gaslighting her, and then she again ended up taking a back seat. Then season 4 came along, and as Artie said, it was like Tina had become possessed. Not only did she become extremely confident, she also morphed into a quote-unquote diva, taking on the characteristics of the girls who graduated. This transformation didn't come out of nowhere. After season 3, Jenna went to Rib and expressed her feelings about always taking a backseat, which led to the new Tina in season 4. She proposed storylines, but none of them were used except for the one where Jenna has a tendency to date men who turn out to be gay, and this gave birth to that awkward Tina/Blaine crush storyline. In season 5, Tina regained some of her original sweetness and vulnerability. Her relationship with Sam, though short-lived, was such a silly and funny side of her. Also, she began to reflect more on her time in the Glee Club and the positive impact it had on her life, which I actually think was more Jenna than Tina. But yeah, her character arc concluded with her acceptance into Brown, and that just started her new chapter in life. And this was a somewhat satisfying ending for the fans who had followed Tina's journey from the beginning, as it at least provided a sense of closure and growth for her character. Many people argue that Tina complained a lot, which is why they dislike her. But you know what? That's not true. She actually didn't complain excessively, especially considering the fact that she patiently stuck it out for 3 years and consistently got the short end of the stick. She did have some mean and insensitive moments, like when she attacked Marley after sectionals, or that weird whole pining after Blaine thing, or even, her self-serving comments that she made during the tribute episode. However, none of those actions matched the Tina from the previous season. That was just psycho Tina with new writers. That's what I chalk it up to. So, overall, Tina's growth as a character left much to be desired. Her sweet and shy attitude was transformed into a seemingly random bitchiness that viewers just, they had a hard time tolerating at that point of the show. Her character did change over time, but instead of becoming more intriguing, she went from being underused to completely misused. It's unclear whether this shift in Tina's character was a conscious decision by the new writers or simply an outcome of the show's progression. Regardless, it's apparent that the character's development was not smooth or well executed as it could have been. Despite her rocky journey, Tina remained a fan favorite for many Glee enthusiasts who, appreciated her unique style and her voice and, her story. In conclusion, Tina's character development throughout Glee was a roller coaster ride with some high points and some very, very low points. Her transformation from shy and introverted girl to a confident and sometimes overly assertive young woman was an interesting journey to watch.
Hey, I'm really sorry about how they all reacted, Artie.
It's okay. I'm used to it. They just don't get it.
Artie Abrams was one of the core 6 in the original Glee Club. He was the only character whose audition we didn't see in the pilot. He didn't really do much singing in the pilot apart from the sit down, you're rocking the boat. When Artie was 8 years old, he got into a car accident with his mom and since then was paralyzed from the waist down. Artie's character wasn't defined by his disability. In fact, this caused his classmates to be quite insensitive at times and had to be reminded of all the challenges he had to go through just to catch up with them. Artie was a very talented boy who excelled in a lot of things. His character was said to know how to play guitar, was apparently part of the AV club, and was a very good student. Also, everything he directed was really decent, and he had one of the best voices in the Glee Club with a very impressive stage presence. Artie was the only male to sing a solo in every season, and overall, one of the 3 characters to do so on the show. He was also the only member to appear in 100 consecutive episodes, breaking that streak in late season 5. Artie's character is one of those characters the writers clearly had no idea what to do with, just like Mercedes and Tina. It seemed to me that they hired most people with one clear idea on their mind and no further thought. You could see this with the Glee Project and the type of characters that ended up on Glee. Ryan liked Damien's Irishness and ended up writing Rory around being Irish, and he originally only gained interest in Sam because he found out that he was Christian and always wanted to write a Christian character. My point is, they often seemed not to be thinking too far after the storylines they were eager to explore. I don't know, maybe they were just too ambitious with trying to focus on so many characters, but after you give us insight into a character, you can't blame the fandom for complaining when you don't follow through. The episodes tackling Artie's disabilities sent a really good message, and personally I think were done really, really well. It was great to see how someone like Artie would feel about someone faking their disability, although it was ironic to mention that in an episode and then hire someone who can walk to play the part. But I digress. Aside from all that, Artie is shown to be quite a dick. He says the most misogynistic, creepy, tone-deaf things all the time, and don't even get me started on the AAVE. I mean, look, when you look at Artie's character, it's true. He had little to no character development, not plenty of storylines, but it's good that the writers made his character not be defined by being in a wheelchair, unlike some of his counterparts. He had normal, meaningful relationships, expressed vulnerability in them, and they were all relevant to the storyline. Was he also an ass to his girlfriend sometimes? Yeah, he was, but to be honest, he wasn't that much worse than most of the guys on the show, or some of the girls for that matter. He was always an integral part of the Glee Club's performances and was never afraid to speak his mind. And it's great that they just let him be a teenage boy. Like, yes, his disability was mentioned frequently, but every time it was to remind us that even though he keeps up, it's not always easy for him and he has to work much harder than everyone else. Also, let's not ignore the fact that Artie's songs and performances stay some of the best ones on the show. Argue with the Wall.
I will never change. I'm proud to be different. It's the best thing about me. So go ahead. Hit me.
So Kurt Hummel, portrayed by Chris Colfer, was an unforgettable character whose development over the course of Glee is nothing short of remarkable. From the moment he stepped into the spotlight as a meek, self-conscious teenager to his eventual transformation into a confident, successful young man, Kurt's arc is a testament to the power of self-acceptance and resilience. As Glee progressed, Kurt's character continued to evolve. He came out to his father, Burt, who proved to be a source of unwavering support and love. This was a pivotal moment in Kurt's story that served as a catalyst for his growth as he began to develop the courage to stand up for himself and his identity. Throughout the series, Kurt faced numerous obstacles, including homophobic bullying from fellow students and his own feelings of isolation. However, these actions only served to strengthen him and solidify his self-confidence. In the show's first season, he was introduced as a shy, introverted student with a passion for fashion and a love of performing. He was initially hesitant to join the Glee Club, fearing that it would make him a target for bullying, and only did so because his father insisted he joined an activity. However, he soon found a sense of belonging within the group and began to discover his true identity. This early stage of Kurt's development focused on his struggle with self-acceptance as he came to terms with his sexuality and learned to embrace his uniqueness. At this point of the story, he was part of the messier characters and still had a lot of growing up to do. His season 1 arc revolved around learning to feel comfortable about his sexuality and how to express it. He also had a very obvious crush on Finn in season 1 that made Finn very uncomfortable. He sets up his father with Finn's mother in order to get closer to him, but it just backfired when 1, Burt started bonding with Finn and he got jealous, and 2, when Finn ended up losing it and using a slur. In season 2, his arc went deeper in the much darker realities of being a queer teenager at the time. Kurt's journey touches on the subjects of mental health, particularly in relation to the challenges faced by LGBTQ+ individuals. His struggles with self-confidence, loneliness, and anxiety were also sensitively portrayed, offering viewers a chance to understand and emphasize with the character. This emphasis on mental health attempted to destigmatize discussions around the topic and encourage viewers to seek support when needed. It was just heartbreaking to see Kurt's light slowly dim in season 2, first with his dad's heart attack and then basically being assaulted and threatened by Dave. It was really realistic and well done though. Kurt's romantic relationship also played a significant role in his character development. His relationship with Blaine, portrayed by Darren Criss, was a key turning point in Kurt's journey. Blaine became a source of support and encouragement for Kurt, helping him navigate the complexities of queerness and self-acceptance. In season 3, Kurt realized that due to all the drama happening in his life, he didn't have enough in his resume to get into his school of choice. This led to his election arc, which he would eventually lose because of Rachel's tampering. Blaine would transfer to McKinley to be closer to him, which would create a lot of tensions in their relationship, like the Tony part and Kurt texting that guy from the music store or whatever. Now, regarding Kurt and getting into NYADA, there's a whole lot of saltiness in the fandom about that one, and it's one of the most exhausting discourses in the fandom to listen to, because the only reason Kurt didn't get in was because Chris Colfer didn't want Kurt to follow a traditional theater boy route. Okay, that's why he still went to New York but ended up doing fashion instead. The plan was always for Rachel and him to go to New York and be there together. They just decided to give Chris what he wanted and then had the brilliant idea to bring Sarah Jessica Parker on the show and gave us one of the most offensive mashups of all time. So yeah, had it not been because of this, Kurt would have definitely gotten in anyway. And honestly, I'm glad it happened, because boy do I love his Being Alive performance with every fiber of my being. From season 4 and on, his relationship with Blaine would only keep going downhill. Like, there was the cheating, then the broken engagement, then Blaine's disgusting involvement with his tormentor later, but somehow they still found their way back together and got married. He also had this really forgettable relationship with Adam in college, and then he had this thing with this old guy. I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, so that happened. Okay, and then After this, nothing else too major happened with his character that didn't involve Blaine. There was the whole, band thing in season 5 with Elliot, played by, I cannot remember his name. How can I remember his name? Okay, and then his dad having cancer in season 4, but that was really it. As Kurt continued to evolve, his personal style also underwent significant transformation. In the earlier seasons of the show, Kurt's fashion choices were characterized by flamboyance and extravagance. However, as he matured and became more confident in his identity, his style evolved to reflect his newfound assurance. His fashion choices became more refined and sophisticated, showcasing his growth and development not only as a character but also as an individual. Kurt's friendship dynamics in Glee played a crucial role in his character development as well. The Glee Club provided him with a sense of belonging and a supportive environment where he could be his true self. His close friendship with Mercedes, for instance, offered a heartwarming portrayal of unwavering support and understanding. They shared a love for fashion and music, and their bond strengthened as they navigated the highs and lows of high school together. Additionally, Kurt's friendship with Rachel began as a competitive rivalry, but ultimately transformed into a strong, supportive connection as they both strove to achieve their dreams in the competitive world of performing arts. These friendships, amongst others, helped Kurt embrace his individuality, develop resilience, and foster a strong sense of self-worth, further illustrating the importance of healthy, supportive relationships in personal growth and self-discovery. The bond between Finn and Kurt, played by Corey Monteith, was also a great exploration of friendship, understanding, and brotherhood. Initially, they had a rocky start, with Finn being the popular jock and Kurt being an outcast, and again Finn being put off by Kurt's romantic feelings towards him. However, as their families blended, they learned to respect and appreciate each other's differences, and the relationship highlighted the themes of breaking down stereotypes and finding common ground despite seemingly insurmountable differences. And honestly, I loved their family. It was such a great decision. So Kurt's resilience in the face of adversity, his growth as a character, and his unwavering commitment, to being his true self made him an inspirational role model for viewers. He truly had an amazing stage presence, and he was a true team player. He threw out the defying gravity sing-off to protect his dad. He slushied his own face when Finn was bullying him, and he encouraged Mercedes not to give in to dirty dieting when Rachel wanted to do that whole nude thing. He was like putting his foot down because he knew she'd regret it. Like, he was just always there for everyone. His journey served as a reminder of the importance of self-acceptance and the power of love and support from his friends and family. Kurt's story has undoubtedly left a lasting impression on fans and has inspired countless individuals to embrace their unique identities.
I just don't get it. Why are you a bigger star than me? You always get the big solos, the best songs, the moments in the sun. Why is it never me?
Mercedes Jones. Okay, so Mercedes Jones was one of, again, the core 6 to join the Glee Club and was present in all episodes until graduation, I think. She was one of a kind and compassionate member of the Glee Club that often ended up being the bigger person in most situations. I could arguably say that she was the most supportive member of the Glee Club, having assisted every single Glee Club competition. She is a girl that wanted to be recognized more than ever and honestly never got her dues. What we know about Mercedes is that she was raised in Ohio her entire life. She's Christian and her dad's a dentist and she wants to be a singer. If anybody else has got anything else of substance, please add it to the comment section. Okay, so first off, I'd like to apologize in advance if this ends up being a rant, but honestly, I don't think that there are many angles under which you can look at Mercedes and not get angry about her character. The disrespect level towards this character just makes my blood boil. I mean, Amber Riley is one talented singer, actress, and dancer, and if you want to argue with this one, you can take it up with her Dancing with the Stars victory. Thank you. The laziness when it came to the writing of this character, I mean, it was just stereotypes on top of stereotypes on top of stereotypes. The show wasn't even writing Mercedes' character any different than most shows were portraying Black teens at the time, but for a show that basically sold its product on diversity, they really dropped the ball on Mercedes. The thing about her that's so frustrating is that so many people will argue that there's nothing wrong with the way her character is written. And you know what? The core writers never overtly wrote something that would alarm the racism police. But when you look at Mercedes, the entire basis of her character was just another huge addition to the pile of surface level black characters that basically have always existed in predominantly white spaces. The writers having the audacity to have William sit there and say that they're all minorities in the Glee Club and then pan the screen to Mercedes. Or it's not Glee Club, it's Crunk Club. Like, are you kidding me? The constant unique Mercedes jokes. And I love Glee and I recognize that some of these are just jokes. And to be honest, they don't bother me all that much because the writers took shots at everyone, even though there are plenty of times that they completely crossed the line. The thing that just irks me, and this happens with black female character, is that they're often written as sassy, confident, loud characters that just end up becoming so hard to relate to for most of the audience members. They're often used to deliver the quick tell it like it is truth that everyone is scared to point out. Mercedes was first portrayed that way, but was then revealed to have insecurities and all. Her character, to me, was just a party of contradictions that made her linear story really hard to follow. They used a lot of that Mercedes is a diva whenever it was convenient, but legit, like, how was she actually a diva? How was she even more of a diva than, say, Finn Hudson, I kick chairs when I'm mad? It always felt cheap to me that they referred to her as a diva because she just, fit the part. Season 3 comes around and, oh, Mercedes is lazy. She doesn't work as hard as Rachel. That's why she doesn't get what she wants. Like, didn't y'all on multiple occasions specify that Mercedes was part of a black church choir? Like, you don't think she practices her vocal techniques even harder there? Like, you see, it's just these stuff that would make me roll my eyes when they would try to justify their treatment of her character by using stereotypes. Like, Mercedes had little to no development throughout the show, and the only reason she was given a love interest was basically because the fandom kept complaining that she was the only girl who had never had any sort of real romantic interactions. In season 1, she joined the Cheerios. We got a great self-love storyline. We actually saw Mercedes be vulnerable and form a bond with Quinn, who she would actually have stay at her house later on. So can you tell me, where did that friendship go? Don't look at me, I don't know either. In season 2, she had another brief moment of vulnerability during the prom episode, and then another short moment with Sam in the finale, and then that was it. Literally, that was it for her in season 2. Everything else she said was pretty much interchangeable with Tina or Mike and etc. Then in season 3, we get Mercedes is lazy and is not a team player. Actually, you know what? Scratch that. They started that shit in season 2. Remember the episode Funeral where Mercedes sang a jaw-dropping rendition of Try a Little Tenderness and Jesse called her lazy, but then went on to praise Rachel Berry for an incredible standing in one spot performance of My Man, which by the way was also breathtaking and is still one of my favorite Rachel solos. But do you get where I'm going here? Why is she lazy? Is it because she's bigger than Rachel? Why is she sassy? Because God forbid a black woman speaks up about never getting a chance to shine, but is always conveniently used to hit the high notes that no one else can. And yes, I'm very much implying that Mr. Shu called her out on having an attitude problem and being a terrible sport when she was finally standing up for herself because she was black. I'm sorry. People say Tina in the later season turned out to be a bitch, but no one used the term attitude to describe her, and that's where the difference between the two comes from. Mercedes never sang a solo at any competition, and to this day it blows my mind. She was one of the core 6. Like, come on. Again, I'm sorry, I'm going on about this, but it's so hard to address this character without ending up in a long rant about how they never dug anywhere with her character. Another example, in Born This Way, we see her wear a no-weave shirt. Like, what the does that even mean? That was literally the longest Glee episode, and you couldn't take 2 minutes out to have Mercedes address her out of nowhere insecurity about her hair. Even for those who didn't have screen time in that episode to explain their insecurity, we still understood because it had been tackled in previous episodes. But then with Mercedes, nothing, just no weave. Like, that's it, just no weave. Like, what does that even mean? So cheap. Anyway, I understand that the writers needed to find a reason to have Mercedes quit the Glee Club in season 3, but the whole lazy and has an attitude narrative was just unnecessary when she already had a valid reason to be upset. Like, the West Side Story thing, for example. Basically, Mercedes' biggest role in the story was to be Rachel's rival for the episodes and eventually back down at the end of said episodes. But hey, apart from that, I personally rooted for Mercedes to the entire season, and as annoying as it was that nothing with her was ever fleshed out, at least they made her successful. And I guess, she had some of the top performances on the show that people still look at. So, she still stays winning.
I was the only one standing in the way of myself. Can't change your past, but you can let go and start your future.
So when you first met Quinn, she was clearly meant to be an antagonist. At first, she was just a popular mean girl who was dating the quarterback and despised Rachel Berry. However, as the show progressed, we got to see more of her character. She was artistically talented, got pregnant, and had a major arc throughout the first season. We saw different sides of her, from her darker, manipulative side to her softer, friendlier side. So throughout the series, she went through a lot of transformations, some better than others. She was constantly in a cycle of ups and downs, whether it was her relationships, her friendships, or her personal growth. She had an interesting dynamic with other characters, and we saw how she changed and matured over time. Quinn's character started out as a popular mean girl, but later revealed her talent for singing. Her character arc began in season 1 when she got pregnant and tried to trick her boyfriend Finn into taking responsibility for the baby. Throughout the series, she underwent various transformations, from being kicked out of her home to obsessively pursuing prom royalty, trying to steal her baby back, to getting into a car accident and being temporarily paralyzed. By the end of season 3, Quinn had been through more than any other character on the show. Quinn's romantic relationships were complex and intriguing. A lot of the times, it felt like her relationships with Finn was more about popularity and status than genuine feelings. They probably were attracted to each other, but it also felt very transactional. With Sam, her other love interest, they had great chemistry, but ultimately they didn't make anything out of it. With Quinn's bond with Puck, the show made them seem like soulmates, but in retrospect, and I'm also very guilty of this, there were so many unaddressed issues with their relationship, most notably the fact that Puck took advantage of her, which led to a whole series of unaddressed traumas that would only further damage her. On the friendship front, Quinn's relationship with other characters also evolved. She started as an enemy to Rachel, but eventually became one of her bridesmaids. Her friendship with Mercedes had potential for a deep bond, but it was unfortunately underutilized. Quinn's connection with Santana and Brittany was also a fan favorite, showcasing support, jealousy, and even romantic encounters, even though the trio barely interacted. Some people complain about how erratic Quinn's behavior is throughout the show, but I think that it added to her complexity. Her backstory in the Born This Way episode provided a clear explanation. Previously an overweight and bullied girl, Quinn transformed herself with sports and a nose job and a new name. Her rivalry with Rachel could be seen as a reflection of her own insecurity, as she despised the confident and unapologetic person that Rachel is and that she could never be. Quinn's role in Glee was initially meant to be a villain, but actress Diana Agron gave her humanity and likable qualities. Throughout the show, Quinn represented a character struggling with her identity and the expectations placed upon her by her parents and society. Quinn's character is a great example of what can happen when someone puts on a facade and tries to become someone they're not. She represents the struggles of trying to fit into a certain mold while hiding one's true self. Her journey from villain to one of the most human characters on the show is a testament to her growth and development. Quinn's story in Glee highlights the importance of self-love and healing. Her quest for external validation and perfection ultimately led her to lose sight of what truly mattered, and it's only when she learned to love herself and accepted herself that she could truly find peace. In conclusion, Quinn Fabry was an amazing character who underwent significant, sometimes chaotic development throughout the series. Her Her complexity and relatability made her a fan favorite, and Diana Agron's portrayal added depth and humanity to the role. Although her character's journey had its ups and downs, Quinn ultimately emerged as a symbol of personal growth and the importance of self-love. Okay, so this one's going to be complicated, and listen, I know that I'm going to speak about a fictional character and that we should always try to separate art from the artist, but given this particular subject, if you don't feel completely comfortable discussing anything around this person, please feel free to skip this section because there's just much more to this video anyway. Okay, so Puck. So Puck started out pretty much the same way Quinn, Santana, and co started out. Threatened by the Glee Club and threatened by what it meant for his status that Finn started associating with the club. He was one of the many kids who joined the Glee Club with a personal agenda in mind. Unlike the Cheerios, he joined after finding out that Quinn was pregnant to get closer to her. Glee is a show where there's so much cheating that it's almost useless to judge most of them by that because it's almost a default in most of their arcs. However, with Puck, it's a little more sticky than that. Puck's first scenes on the show were him bullying and being a complete dick to people, which isn't that much different from the Cheerios initial arcs. The difference lies in that on top of being a popular bully, he would go on to sleep with his best friend's girlfriend and impregnate her. We are in a time where consent is finally being addressed in every way that it should be, but in 2009 we're very far from having this kind of conversation so openly, especially on prime TV. If we look at the simple facts of what happened between Quinn and Puck and what we were shown, it adds up to the fact that Puck did assault Quinn. Even putting the drinking aside, he lied about using a condom, which resulted in her getting pregnant. Because even if she did consent to sleeping with him, she didn't consent to sleeping with him without a condom. Like, there's literally no argument there. Puck was the biggest villain in that triangle. Finn may have been a dick later on, and Quinn was definitely horrible for what she did later on, but Puck was the one who truly got away unscathed. I very much understand that the writer's intent was most likely never to portray what happened between them as assault. They made it a point in the later seasons to make Quinn say otherwise, not overtly, but they very much tried to clean it up. But you know, it's still there. It's still there, and some people just can't forget it. With all of this, though, it's really interesting because he still ended up having one of the most successful redemption arcs on the show. They at least tried to show that he really cared for Quinn, and he always had, and that he always cared immensely about Beth and would have probably been there for her. Despite everything, he remained one of the most loyal members of the club. Like, once he got in, he never got out again. Unlike Finn, he owned that he enjoyed being in the Glee Club. They showed some real progression with him. By season 2, he had already started applying the lessons that he learned from his past mistakes. I want to point out that his friendship with Rachel is one of my favorite ones because it was a genuine one, even though, like most of his relationships on the show, it eventually faded. His season 3 storyline with Shelby was not my cup of tea, but to be completely honest, nothing about his side of the storyline was out of character. Him struggling to graduate and having all his high school negligence catch up to him was also a really good way to cap his main storyline because it made sense that all his negligence for school would catch up to him. His season 4 storyline was whack AF, except for the Finn part, which I personally enjoyed. Also, what a major step back having him go back and dating a high schooler. Like, come on. And again, they just glossed over it and made him join the Navy and be with Quinn. So, you know, at least we know where the writers stand on his attitude regarding girls and everything.
Okay, look. Believe what you want, but no one's forcing me to be here. And if you ever tell anyone this, I'll deny it. But I like being in Glee Club.
In the beginning, Santana was the stereotypical mean girl sidekick, but as the show went on, she became a compelling character with real emotions and motivations. Santana was a head bitchin' type of girl, unafraid to speak her mind, and was also incredibly perceptive. Her close relationship with Brittany was a significant part of her journey, and we saw her struggle with her sexuality throughout the series. Santana had a tough exterior, but also was vulnerable and fiercely protective of those she cared about. Through the seasons, we we saw Santana grow from a one-dimensional girl into a strong, intelligent, and perceptive character. She also became an important LGBTQ plus representation in the media, showcasing the struggles of coming out. Santana's relationship with other characters on the show was tumultuous, but eventually she found her place with Brittany. Their love story was a highlight of the show, and we saw them navigate ups and downs of life together, culminating in their marriage in season 6. Throughout the series, Santana became a major key player in uncovering secrets and resolving conflicts. She was often the one to notice subtle clues and bring important issues to light, even if it meant stirring up drama along the way. Initially, she had some toxic relationships with Puck and Quinn and even Finn, but as time went on, she bonded with the others in the Glee Club and formed strong friendships with like Mercedes and surprisingly Rachel. Santana's relationship with Brittany was truly special, and it's crazy to think that they almost didn't end up together. You know, if it wasn't for the fandom, Brittana wouldn't have happened. They obviously had their ups and downs, and there's a lot of the fandom that feels a little iffy about the relationship because of Brittany's way of thinking and believing, if you will, that Santana manipulated them. But you know, ultimately the show portrayed that their friendship and love for each other made them one of the most mature and enduring couples on the show, and they just really had that like soulmate factor. Her upbringing is a bit of a mystery, but we know that her abuela played a big role in her life, and she had a complex relationship with her parents, well, her dad at least. We also know that she faced some challenges growing up, like possibly maybe being bullied and struggling again with her sexuality. As a result, she developed a tough, mean exterior, but she was also vulnerable and had a loving side. Her coming out story wasn't handled the best, with, you know, Finn outing her and the writers not really grasping the importance of the situation. Also, the song choices and the way her sexuality was being treated by the other characters was really problematic. You know, it's clear that this storyline should have and could have been executed better if the main writers were involved, but unfortunately it just wasn't taken seriously like that. So in summary, Santana's journey on Glee was a roller coaster of personal growth, relationships, and self-discovery. She went from being a mean girl to a loyal and protective friend, and her love story with Brittany was one of the highlights of the show. There were definitely some mishandled aspects of her story, but overall, Santana Lopez is an incredibly compelling character.
People have always told me that I was stupid, and after a while I started to believe them. And it wasn't until I walked in this room and I joined this club that I really started believing in myself.
I'm going to preface this by saying that I absolutely love Hemo, and I totally get the obsession with Brittany. She used to be my sister's favorite character, and Santana used to be mine. Today, when I asked her why she liked Brittany so much, she couldn't really give me an answer. Interestingly, she is one of the many people who like or have liked Brittany, but can't really tell me why they love her character so much, and I think that's what truly captures the essence of Brittany for me. She's just kind of always been there. A character whose presence I enjoy / don't mind. My thing is that I get that with a lot of shows, you can't truly rely on logic with many storylines and even characters, and there are a whole lot of those Glee storylines you just sort of have to ignore because it's just nonsense. I, for one, am pretty good at just blocking out certain storylines, or hell, even going as far as inventing essays worth of excuses as to why it could be realistic. For example, even though Tina's character change was annoying and unlikely, there was still a way it could happen in the Glee universe simply because of the chain of actions. Now, Brittany's character is one that I personally have just basically given up on making sense of. Like, I'm absolutely sorry. There's just no logical connectivity from her first arc to her last one. But for the sake of this video, let's talk about it some more. Maybe as we go, I'll be able to make some sense of her, but yeah, we'll see. So Brittany starts out as the sort of lovable airhead cheerleader who just kind of goes with the flow, but never has great purpose or use. For narrative purposes, she's one of the characters there to just drop the hilarious lines that have become quite iconic on the show. Remember, in the first season, she was just in the background with a few odd lines here and there. But then when she became one of the main characters in season 2, things just got a little bit strange because we never knew, did the writers want her to have some kind of like developmental or intellectual disability or not, because they never made it clear. Like, she believes in Santa Claus. She thinks babies come from storks. She has no clue how to use a computer. And because of this, her character's just never held accountable for her actions. She's just there, literally. And, she does some pretty bad stuff, like falsely accusing a teacher of sexual assault, outing her girlfriend, and releasing a sex tape. Like, hello. And being insensitive to her friends. That's one that she does a lot too, that just gets glossed over. But somehow she just gets away with it because she's portrayed as not understanding the consequences of her actions. Well, until she does, you know what I mean? And weirdly, she's just generally good at getting along with just about anybody, but she doesn't hold her tongue, and she just pretty much just spews out whatever she may be thinking. It's quite interesting, actually, now that I think about it, because apart from that time Artie and Finn called her dumb in the heat of the moment, and maybe another time, I don't know, her character never really gets insulted or confronted by anyone, or confronted for anything she does. People just kind of give up or attack Quinn or Santana. Brittany's stupidity just sort of depends on the writers. There are episodes where she's a bit ditzy, if maybe just a bit out there, and then there are episodes where her stupidity is so hyped up, like to near impossible levels, and makes you question how she even functions every day. She also has a creative internal logic in her ditzy moments. At one point, when asked what's the capital of Ohio, Brittany confidently answers, "Oh, technically O is the capital of Ohio. That is the capital letter in the word O." Moments like that. So it's just weird. Just like any beloved character, even the ones that are completely innocent, they may be popular, but there's always going to be some criticism. And with this one, I get it, because her eventual, genius, like, really, Ryan, how completely lazy. Like, you could have been like, oh, she got hired by like a dance crew, or the Glee Club helped her complete her missing credits, like, anything, but like, a genius? Really? Like, come on now. People have a hard time standing her with Santana because of the way the relationship was presented at times. The way Brittany was just completely clueless and just didn't understand, apparently, that she was cheating on Artie because the piping was different. And then somehow she's a genius. Like, come on, really? And the other thing about the relationship with Santana is that some have gone as far as to argue that none of her relationships were really meaningful and that she just kind of went with the flow with whoever. But honestly, I just chalk it up to the flaws in writing. Apart from that, she truly shone as one of the most consistently amusing characters on Glee, rivaling even with the legendary Sue Sylvester. Brittany was at her absolute best as a background character, delivering her iconic quips or during the genuine emotional exchanges with others, such as her heart-to-heart conversation with Santana, or her mentoring relationships with Becky, or her speech at the end of season 4. My favorite Brittany era, personally, was season 2. I loved that they were able to give Heather songs that made her performances such standouts. I also loved her style the most once she wasn't a Cheerio anymore. There was just something about her grounded moments that would warm my heart, like her heart-to-heart moment with Santana in the season 2 finale, when she got like really real with Santana in the Born This Way episode. I also love the sort of slow burn thing they had in season 2. Her interest in student office in season 3 was also a really fun side, even though I absolutely loathed that dinosaur prom. Like, I'm sorry, horrendous. But yeah, listen, I'm really sorry. This is all I have for Brittany. Like, she was a fun background character. She had amazing performances. She was so fun to watch on screen. But her character just didn't make enough sense to me. And so even when I try to dig deep, I just get a headache. So I'm sorry. But yeah, this is all I have. But like, at the end of the day, like, you just gotta appreciate that she's like our bi-con, like our bi-icon. And she's just unapologetically herself. And she just, she just lived in her truth and embracing it, but just living her life.
I don't want to be a surgeon or a lawyer, Mom. I want to be an artist. And the only time I really feel special is when I do that.
So let's talk about Mike Chang. So initially, Mike Chang was a background character, like many who started on Glee. He was known for his impressive dance skills, but not much else. Mike's relationship with Tina was a significant part of his storyline. They were one of the longest lasting and most stable couples on the show. Throughout their time together, they supported each other's dreams and aspirations, which was really sweet to watch. Their breakup in season 4 was pretty realistic, showing that sometimes high school sweethearts don't last forever, especially when they go off to college and start exploring different paths. While Mike wasn't the most central character on Glee, he had his moments that contributed to the overall story. His friendship with the other Glee Club members, especially Artie and Puck, added some sort of depth to his character and showed how supportive and loyal he was to his friends. You could also just tell that he was a nice guy, like plain and simple. He was on the football team and joined the Glee Club because he wanted to. He never threatened to leave or acted up. He was arguably one of the hardest working members in the Glee Club, considering the fact that the rest of them had been singing for most of their lives, and he put in the work and learned how to sing in about a year or so. Like, props to the actor himself. So one of the biggest criticisms is that Mike was often sidelined and not given the same depth and development as other characters. For a long time, he was primarily known for his dancing abilities, and his character didn't receive a proper storyline until the third season, which obviously disappointing considering Glee's ensemble cast and potential for more in-depth exploration of each character. His development, when it finally happened, seemed to focus mainly on the cultural expectations he faced as an Asian American. While it's an essential topic to address, it's a shame that it took so long for the writers to give him a more meaningful storyline. And look, I get that most of the time, as a person of color, a lot of your experiences unfortunately do revolve around race, but I don't know, it felt like the Asian jokes were the cheapest ones, like Asian camp, really. Also, both Asians in a random town in Ohio having the same last name, like really, that was so lazy. It would have been so nice to just see more of Mike's interests, aspirations, and relationships through the show instead of just one main storyline. The negligence from the writers could also be seen in how Mike's storyline was wrapped up. After he graduated, Mike made a few appearances in the later seasons, but his character's future was left quite vague compared to the others. The lack of closure was disappointing for fans who invested in his character and wanted to see him succeed in his dreams. Mike had his moment on Glee and broke some stereotypes. There were definitely issues with how his character was treated by the writers. The lack of proper development, sidelining, and unresolved storylines left fans wanting more from Mike. It was a missed opportunity, as Glee could have delved deeper into his life and giving him the same attention as the other characters on the show. But listen, I also get that it's like a show with a billion characters, and so it must not have been easy for the writers. But again, for someone who stuck it out for 3 seasons, I think he deserved better than one storyline. But yeah.
In the beginning of this year, I was just another football player.
Look, it felt wrong for me to make this video and not mention him at least once. Like, I feel bad and all, but like, honestly, there isn't much to say. Just another very disrespected character on Glee. Like, the fact that we heard him talk all of 3 times and the last line was, "Hey Mercedes," in 2009. Like, I don't know if you've ever watched some of the behind the scenes of season 1. It's so funny because he's literally like the most talkative one. Yeah, I'm just bummed that like the only black guy from the Glee Club before Jake was just like booted out. That was really annoying too. Yeah, Glee. That's Glee for you. Okay, so I almost forgot to add Becky, so I'm gonna talk about her real quick. Okay, so when the show first aired, I couldn't stand Becky. Like, I didn't think that Glee needed another bitchy character. Like, I just didn't think it was necessary. But I've learned to appreciate different aspects of Glee, and I've learned to appreciate her contributions on the show too. As bitchy as she was equally as funny. I mean, the "oh snaps" and calling everyone, including Mr. Shu, a bitch, her internal monologue being Helen Mirren's voice, and her beef with xylophones were all details I didn't notice I enjoyed until I truly started thinking about her character. She had Down syndrome, but Glee made it a point to show us that she wanted to and deserved to be treated like everyone else, and I respect it. Like, I respect and appreciate that they didn't make her a one-dimensional and just like kind character just to check a box. So yeah, looking back, I think that Becky Jackson was another great addition to Glee.
Glee Club will never end Mr. Shu because you are Glee Club.
All right, let's dive into William Schuster, aka Mr. Shu. All right, so he was an integral part of the show. As the teacher who brought together the new directions, he was the glue that held the group together. But there's a lot more to his character than just being a quote-unquote supportive teacher. So let's talk about that. So when we first met Mr. Shu, he was this idealistic, passionate teacher who wanted to make a difference in his students' lives. He was inspired by his own high school Glee Club experience, which was like the highlight of his life. You know, it's it's sweet, but a little bit sad because you can't help but think like, dude, maybe it's time to move on from high school, you know? But I mean, I guess everyone's got their thing. So his dedication to the Glee Club was admirable, but it was not all sunshine and rainbow with Mr. Shu. There were times where he could be quite self-centered, and let's be honest, his actions were kind of questionable. Like, remember when he planted pot in Finn's locker to blackmail him into joining the Glee Club? And then there's his relationship with his wife Terri. Like, man, was that a mess. I mean, Terri faked a pregnancy to keep him around, which was all kinds of messed up, but Mr. Shu wasn't exactly a saint in that situation either. He was emotionally distant and didn't communicate with Terri, and then he went on and had an emotional affair with Emma, the school's guidance counselor. You know, that whole storyline was just yikes. But let's get back to his role as a teacher. Mr. Shu was definitely the heart of the New Directions at the beginning. He genuinely cared about his students. He was always pushing them to be their best, even when it meant making unpopular decisions, like when he assigned the kids to perform songs they'd never heard of, or when he made them compete against each other. Like, he could be tough, but it's because he really believed in their potential. At the same time, he could also be pretty inconsistent with his leadership. Sometimes he'd be really involved, and other times he'd just kind of disappear and leave the kids to fend for themselves. And then there were these moments where he'd make decisions that were more about his ego than what was best for the group. I mean, how many times did we see him perform with the kids when it really wasn't necessary? As for the media reception of his character, it was definitely mixed. Like, some people loved Mr. Shu for his dedication and passion, while others like criticized him for his like questionable actions and inconsistency. But I think it's fair to say that he was, you know, also one of the biggest polarizing figures on the show. Now let's talk about his evolution on Glee. In the beginning, he was this wide-eyed, optimistic teacher who thought that he could change the world with song and dance. But as the show went on, we saw him face some harsh realities, both in his personal life and his role as a teacher. He had to deal with budget cuts, unsupportive administrations, and the challenges that came with leading a diverse group of students. Through it all, he remained steadfast in his belief in the power of music and the importance of the Glee Club. And as the series progressed, we saw him grow and, I guess, mature as a person. He eventually found happiness with Emma and learned how to better balance his personal life with his responsibilities as a teacher. One of the most significant changes in Mr. Shu's role on the show comes in the later seasons when some of the original cast graduate and move on, and Mr. Shu has to adopt a new group of students and figure out how to keep the New Directions alive and thriving. And to be honest, I kind of felt bad for the new kids because like he had this attitude of like, okay, so I just lost a group of really talented students and like I like you guys, but also you guys aren't them. Like, he just had that energy. Like, he didn't overtly ever say it, but like when the kids wanted to write original music, for example, like he lost that spark even though he had won. So you'd think that he'd come back and be really like excited to like start a new thing again, but he had just lost it. And I think that was actually Matthew Morrison's energy coming out into Mr. Shu. But yeah, so in the final season we saw him take on a new challenge when he became the coach of Vocal Adrenaline. Like, what a traitor, by the way. Like, I know like he has a family that he needs to take care of and everything, but like Vocal Adrenaline, really? But eventually he gets hired and he comes back and he ends up being like the principal of McKinley High, and it gets turned into like an art school and whatever. So that's pretty much, and he ends up having a kid. So throughout the series, Mr. Shu had his fair share of ups and downs, but in the end, he did remain true in his passion for music and his belief in the power of the Glee Club to change lives. Like, he wasn't perfect by any means, but he still managed to make a lasting impact on the students he taught and the viewers who watched his journey unfold. So I did this waves thing in my Gilmore Girls deep dive, and I thought it would be fun to also do this with William because I think his character slowly degraded over time and because he has somehow become the most hated character on the show, but it didn't happen overnight. And so that's why I want to talk about the different waves in which people started hating him. So, okay, wave one, the pilot. For some people, the pilot was enough. Him planting pot in a student's locker, although played for laugh, was enough to make some people just lose complete respect for him. Wave 2. You're all minorities because you're in the Glee Club. Need I say more? Wave 3. Tell me something good. That's it. If you didn't break there, you're a veteran. Wave 4. Toxic performance. Favoritism for Finchel. Rocky Horror with teenagers. Wave 5. being so unfair that he ran his OG students out of the club and calling Mercedes lazy and the whole Spanish teacher thing. Wave 6. Only having teenage friends, asking a teenager to be his best man, being dismissive and stubborn, feuding with a 19-year-old, telling Unique to turn it down with the boob thing. Wave 7. Not being understanding of a girl with an eating disorder, and yes, I get that she didn't respect the assignment, but he was also an adult and should have known better. Twerking with students, and to make it worse, over the song Blurred Lines. Prioritizing twerking over the safety and comfortability of a trans kid. In conclusion, William Schuster's character on Glee was a complex, multifaceted figure who played a significant role in the lives of the New Direction members. He had his flaws that made some questionable decisions, but his passion for music and dedication to his students were undeniable. The media reception to his character, again, was mixed, but ultimately his evolution and changing role in the story showcased growth and impact, and yeah. Yeah. So yeah, maybe you don't hate Mr. Shu, maybe you like him, maybe you're just one of those people. But yeah, this is what I have for William. It's very interesting that he was portrayed as a loving teacher and then ended up having pretty much the opposite effect in the fandom. I try to defend people all the time because that's how I analyze. I try to look at the good and the bad. And yeah, there's some good, especially at the beginning of the series. And I thought a lot of the times that when he got hate at the beginning, it was a little exaggerated. But as the show went on, he just kept doing things. And I was like, yeah, no, you're just, yeah, it's not, I can't defend you. Like, I don't even know what to say right now. But yeah, so if you don't like William, I can't blame you. And if you like him, questionable. I, for one, just don't mind any character really on Glee. So I don't hate him and I don't like him. But yeah, wow, I'm really mumbling here. Okay, let's move on.
Well, I'm on my feet 4 hours a day, 3 times a week here. Now I have to go home and I have to cook dinner for myself.
Terri Schuster is a character I didn't appreciate as much back when it first aired. I hadn't quite grasped the chaotic energy she brought to the show and how much the back nine had a Terri-sized hole in it. I mean, she's essentially what made William's original arc compelling and interesting. Her and Sue, of course. My thing with Terri is that I never judged her initially for telling Will that she was pregnant. I mean, who could? She actually thought that she was pregnant and she did want to tell him, but her amazingly toxic and manipulative sister, Kendra, advised her against it. Well, more like ordered her against it and kept the pregnancy scheme alive. If Terri didn't have Kendra, she wouldn't have lasted half as long with that lie. That's not to say that Terri was innocent. She was clearly emotionally abusive to Will. She would constantly gaslight him and actively cultivate an environment that pushed Will to feel unaccomplished and bad about himself. And that's a commonly used tactic used by abusers to make you believe that you can never find anything better than them elsewhere and keep you trapped in a bubble. That's why Terri was so threatened by the Glee Club. It gave Will a sense of purpose again and started to fill up the void that Terri had spent so much time, deepening. Listen, at the end of the day, Terri just seemed unwell herself. And there were times where she was completely right. Will was in fact having an emotional affair with Terri. But as awful as Will is described to be as a person by the fandom, there are not many angles under which Terri's actions were excusable, to be honest. With all that being said, she was a greatly written character and I live for all of her scenes with Kendra as well. The actress Jesslyn Gilseg has the best comedic timing and I lived for all of her season 1 scenes.
No, it's never over. I don't care what anybody says. Some things are worth fighting for.
You mean like the kids?
Yes, of course.
Anything else?
No.
All right. Emma Pillsbury. Emma Pillsbury is one of the most consistent characters on the show, if not the most. She's the school's guidance counselor at McKinley High School, and a lot of fans always wonder how she got the job. But honestly, in a world where William could be a high school Spanish teacher while barely speaking any Spanish, I wouldn't really question Emma's position. Also, I wouldn't say that she was bad at her job. She was introduced to us when Glee was still heavily running on satire, so they had her say a lot of silly things, but as the show went on, she would actually end up giving good advice to the kids, excluding anything that had to do with sex, of course. Emma is an adorable, kind, nurturing, and empathetic person who was honestly really hard to hate. I do see why people say they don't care for her or that her character wasn't interesting, but I've never come across anyone in the fandom that hated her. I mean, at least to even a fourth of the level as other characters get hated. And of course, this is the internet, so I know someone's gonna comment, me, I hate her, but you get my point. But yeah, her biggest crime was actively keeping an emotional affair alive with a man who was not only married, but was also expecting a child. And I'm not trying to minimize it, but I'm just saying, like, that was literally the only bad thing I could think of her doing. So Emma had OCD, also known as obsessive compulsive disorder, and misophonia, and it was often portrayed in a cute and quirky way, which drew a lot of criticism from the audience and the media in general. She would eventually start seeing a therapist and would get better, but it would take her quite some time to face the problem and accept that it was a reality. It was implied on the show that her family members didn't really help and might have even made it worse. Now, because this is a sensitive subject dealing with mental disorder, I'm gonna stop here because I don't want to say anything I shouldn't or hurt anyone's feelings. So yeah. Okay. Besides everything I've discussed, one of her main roles on the show would be William's love interest, of course. They had a pretty similar will they, won't they relationship as Rachel and Finn. I will say this though, I shipped them in the beginning, like the first 13 episodes basically, and after that it became really annoying. Like, I know for the sake of the plot they dragged it out as long as possible, but honestly Wemma should have just gotten together since the end of season 1 and been that one stable couple on the show. Like, there's so many things we wouldn't have endured on the show had they just gotten together, especially that horrifying toxic performance or Finn kissing Emma to yet again stir drama where it's not necessary. But yeah, apart from that, Eminem's just, you know, that cute, stable character on the show, and if you hate her, what's wrong with you? Just kidding.
You positively worship a student if they can so much as carry a tune, and yet you don't know a single name of the only true musical geniuses in that choir room. The band!
All right, let's talk about Sue Sylvester. Is it weird that I'm a little scared? Okay, so Sue, played by the amazing Jane Lynch, is the tough, manipulative, and often hilarious cheerleading coach at McKinley High. Throughout the show, she had her ups and downs, but her character remained a constant source of entertainment and, believe it or not, some surprising depth. When we first met Sue, she was the main antagonist to the Glee Club and its director, Mr. Shu. She was all about winning and would do anything to make sure the Cheerio squad stayed on top. This often involved some pretty ruthless tactics like blackmail, sabotage, and even straight up bullying. But you know what? As much as you wanted to dislike her for all the mean things she would do, you couldn't help but appreciate her wicked sense of humor and incredible one-liners. Like, Jane Lynch's delivery is just so on point that it's hard not to laugh, even though the things she says are completely unacceptable most of the time and really offensive. So as the show progressed, we got to see different sides of Sue. While she was still the tough, no-nonsense cheerleading coach, we also learned about her softer side. She had a sister with Down syndrome, Jean, whom she loved and cared for dearly. The relationship humanized Sue's character and showed that there was more to her than just being an evil cheerleading coach, and it added a lot of depth to her character. And honestly, it's one of those things that made her really interesting. Another notable relationship of Sue's was with the character Becky, one of her cheerleaders, also with Down syndrome. Sue took Becky under her wing and became a mentor and friend to her. She would later give birth to a baby girl with Down syndrome. It's clear that Sue's experience with her sister shaped her in a way that made her a better person and a tougher person, even if it wasn't always apparent in other aspects of her life. People were especially cruel to her sister, and her parents pretty much abandoned them. With her backstory revealed, it was easier to understand where she came from and why she handled certain situations the way she did. The episode Grilled Cheeses was a great explanation on why she felt so strongly towards certain subjects, or the Madonna episode, which revealed why she always kept her hair a certain way. Even though she was a villain, she was given plenty of moments on the show that somewhat explained why she was the way she was. Anyway, so the ongoing rivalry with Mr. Shu was one of the most important parts of the first season. While they occasionally joined forces for the greater good, their antagonistic relationship was a central theme throughout the series. This dynamic, though repetitive at times, was engaging to watch as it added an element of tension, conflict, and comedy to the show. Their clashes often provided some of the most memorable and entertaining moments on Glee, and they also revealed the lengths to which both characters were willing to go in order to achieve their goals. Her love life was often just a source of humor and intrigue. The ambiguity honestly just added another layer to her character, making her even more interesting. I mean, who gets married to themselves? Like, who does that? Sue Sylvester. Sue's wardrobe was another memorable feature of her character. Her signature tracksuits, which she wore in nearly every episode, have become iconic. They were a visual representation of her no-sense, utilitarian approach to life. She's a woman who knows what she wants and isn't afraid to go after it, and her wardrobe choices reflect that. Throughout the series, Sue's role evolved. While she started off as a primary antagonist, she eventually became somewhat a reluctant ally to the Glee Club. She even ended up coaching them for a while, helping them win nationals. Like, she would deny it, but I really think she cared about the club and the kids. But yeah, and it was a nice shift. And the addition of Roz Washington as a foil to her was also a really good one. Now, of course, we can't ignore the controversial aspect of Sue's characters, her ruthless tactics and cruel behavior towards the Glee Club members and her fellow faculty members have sparked debates about appropriateness of her actions on the show. You know, while her antiques are often played for laughs, they can also be seen as very problematic, and they sometimes involve bullying or harassment. That said, it's important to remember that Glee is a satirical comedy drama and that Sue's action should be viewed in that context. And quite frankly, a lot of the time, Sue is just saying things that the audience were complaining about and wanted to be said. She herself would often point out the nonsense and inconsistencies on the show, even though she herself was a party of contradictions. But it was always nice to have her point out that how do these college kids keep popping up back at school? Like, how can you afford it? How can you get here so fast when you live in New York? You know, things like that. Or how William was just kind of a weirdo. Like, why do you have so many children friends? As for the media reception of Sue's character, it's been pretty mixed. On one hand, she's been praised for her hilarious one-liners and Jane Lynch's fantastic performance. I mean, she even won an Emmy for her portrayal of Sue. But on the other hand, obviously, critics have taken issue with the more problematic aspects of her character, especially when it comes to her treatment of others. It's also worth noting the impact Sue's character had on pop culture. She's inspired countless memes, quotes, and GIFs, and her catchphrases like, "You think this is hard? Try being waterboarded. That's hard," have become synonymous with the show. Sue has left an undeniable mark on the world of television and has become a pop culture icon in her own right. Despite her many flaws, she's also a character who demonstrates resilience and determination. She's faced numerous challenges throughout the show, including the loss of her sister, a failed political campaign, even though she does end up becoming vice president, and a battle with breast cancer. Through it all, she's managed to persevere and come out stronger in the end. The resilience makes her a relatable character, as it shows that even the toughest people face hardships and have to find the strength to overcome them. Sue Sylvester is a character who has left a lasting impact on the Glee universe and beyond. Her complexity, humor, and depth have made her a fan favorite, and her evolution through the series has showcased the power of storytelling. While some of her actions may be controversial, Sue's character offers a unique perspective on the world of high school and the lengths that some people will go in order to protect their interests and the ones they love. Whether you love her or hate her, there's no denying that Sue Sylvester is an unforgettable character that will be remembered for many more years to come.
Your job is to be yourself. And my job is to love you, no matter what. Okay.
Burt Hummel and Carol Hudson were two characters on Glee that may not have been the primary focus of the show, but they played a significant role in the lives of their children, Kurt and Finn respectively. As supportive and loving parents, they provided a unique perspective on the challenges of raising teenagers in a world where they face various struggles, including bullying, self-discovery, and the pressures of high school. Burt Hummel, played by Mike O'Malley, is the father of Kurt Hummel. He was a blue-collar worker who owned a tire shop, and his character was portrayed as a caring and loving father who supported his son through thick and thin. As a single father raising a gay son, Burt faced unique challenges, but he consistently demonstrated unconditional love and support for Kurt. Burt's character evolved throughout the series, and we saw his growth in several ways. In the beginning, he did struggle with understanding Kurt's sexuality and interests, but he made a conscious effort to learn and grow. Burt's journey highlighted the importance of open open-mindedness and empathy, as well as the power of a supportive and loving parent in a child's life. And then Carol Hudson, portrayed by Romy Rosemont, was Finn Hudson's mother. She was a widow who worked as a real estate agent and later became Burt's wife. Carol's character also offered another perspective on the challenges of single parenthood and the importance of finding love and support in the face of adversity. Carol's character evolved throughout the series as well. Early on, she struggled with Finn's father's death, but she remained supportive and a loving mother to her son. As she and Burt developed a relationship, they became a united front, providing a loving and stable environment for their children. This was particularly evident when they navigated the complexities of blending a family and supporting Kurt and Finn through all their ups and downs in high school, like giving up on their honeymoon in order to pay for Kurt's tuition. In addition to their roles as parents, Burt and Carol also bring a perspective on grief and loss. Both of their characters have lost their respective spouses, and throughout the series they navigate the challenges of moving forward while honoring the memory of their loved ones. Also, Carol has been through it because she not only lost her late husband to drugs, she also ended up losing her son at the age of 19. Like, that's tough. Like, one of the most notable moments in the series involving Burt and Carol is in the episode The Quarterback, which was a tribute to Corey Monteith, who played Finn Hudson. In this episode, both Burt and Carol grappled with the grief and loss of their son, showcasing the raw emotions and struggles that parents face when dealing with such a tragedy. I don't know, I mean, it was really hard for me to watch all the characters go through and express themselves the way they did throughout the episode, but it was, I think, for me, the hardest, seeing the scene with Carol talking about how she has to continue being a parent even though she doesn't have a son anymore. Like, yeah, she has Kurt, but like, I get what she meant in that moment, and how Burt talked about like how his last moments with Finn, you know, he should have been, you know, softer maybe with him or whatever. Like, it was so well done, and it's just so hard. Like, I can get through some of the episode without crying, but when I get to that part, I literally always lose it. It was really well done. So yeah. So Burt and Carol may not have been the main focus on Glee, but their characters provided an essential perspective on the importance of love, support, and understanding in the lives of their children, and their unique experiences as parents and individuals who faced loss added depth and authenticity again to the show, just making them an integral part of the entire Glee universe. In my opinion, season 1 had some of the best guests and rivals of the entire show. There was nothing quite as terrifying as Vocal Adrenaline. None of the later show choir rivals would ever feel as serious as Vocal Adrenaline did. There was also the Jane Addams Academy led by Grace, who was played by Eve, and the Haverbrook School of Death led by Dalton Roomba, played by Michael Hitchcock, who would end up being a Glee writer. The first big guest star on the show was none other than Broadway legend Kristen Chenoweth. She portrayed the character of April Rhodes, who was a McKinley and Glee Club alum. She had never graduated and turned into somewhat of an alcoholic. She would pop in and out of the show, appearing in 2 episodes in season 1, 1 in season 2, and 2 in season 5. After sobering up, she ended up creating a Broadway show and winning a Tony Award for it. Then we have Jonathan Groff, who ended up becoming the face of Vocal Adrenaline as Jesse St. James. He played both a love interest and villain on the show, and would end up being a significant character on the show, as he'd end up being Rachel's husband. He would appear in 7 episodes of season 1, 3 of season 2, and 2 of season 3, and finally 2 of season 6. He would also deliver one of the most iconic number in the show's entire history. Next up, we have Indina Menzel, who turned out to be Rachel's bio mom and Vocal Adrenaline coach Shelby Cochran. She would also be a very important guest star that would have entanglements with quite a few members of the Glee Club. Personally, I see her as somewhat of a villain for the simple fact that everywhere she passed by, she ended up leaving damage and chaos. First one is totally fine. She ended up adopting Quinn and Puck's baby, Beth. Before all of those events, however, she would send one of her students to go mess with her daughter, who would not only get her heart broken by said guy, but Shelby would then swoop in after disrupting her entire life and go like, never mind, you're actually too old, so I'm over it. Bye. Then would come back in season 3 after adopting Quinn's daughter, which any adult with a few brain cells would know how inappropriate it would be to come back into the life of a teenage girl who had to give up her daughter only a year after it happened, and then she would go on to sleep with said baby's high schooler dad. Granted, Puck isn't a saint, but he's still Beth's bio dad, so that was just messy. Maybe selfishness is genetic, and maybe that's where Rachel gets it from. I don't know. Lastly, there was a quick Neil Patrick Harris as Brian Ryan. Olivia Newton-John made a cameo, as well as Josh Groban.
I don't hate being a woman, and I don't regret the things I've been through because they've made me the person I am today. A person strong enough to go through with this transition.
Okay, let's talk about Coach Beiste. Coach Beiste is a gem of a person and a character. In this pool of borderline criminal, narcissistic, selfish, and simply just mean characters, we have Shannon. I love her more every time I watch the show. She was one of the most kind and selfless characters on the show, if not the most. She was by definition, don't judge a book by its cover. On the exterior, she had the big tough guy look, but on the inside, all she wanted to be was loved. I absolutely hate that they made Shannon transition. Here's why. What Shannon represented was, again, challenging gender norms of what it's like to be a woman or feel like one. She talked about growing up, looking different, but always wanting to be like other girls because that's what she felt like on the inside. Her character was also victim of domestic abuse, and the show perfectly addressed the possible invalidation that people like Shannon may get from their entourage. She was a perfect example of it's what's inside that matters, and you truly never know a person. All of this to say, I hated that they had him transition in season 6 because it sort of felt like they erased everything they represented in the earlier seasons. We already had a trans character and a really good one too, and maybe they did in season 6 because Unique left the show and they still wanted the representation, but I don't know. I just loved what Beiste represented, and I wish they had kept that narrative with them. I'm glad they didn't ruin his personality though, and kept him as one of the stable adult figures for the kids.
Hey everybody, I'm Sam. I am. And I don't like green eggs and ham.
Oh wow. Characters like Sam Evans are the exact reason why Glee maybe should have ended after season 3. It's utterly ridiculous what they did to his character. I mean, granted, I was personally more fascinated with, say, Blaine when he joined in season 2 rather than with Sam, but nonetheless, he was a really good grounded character, and I repeat, grounded character when they added him on the show. One of the biggest flaws with Glee is how it didn't know what it wanted to be. The first season featured the heaviest amount of satire that would only decrease as the years went on. So because the absurdity from season 1 was already taken down a notch in season 2, Sam's character low-key was a perfect fit. Like, he had really good chemistry with the rest of the cast. When he first joined the show, there was a lot of speculation both on screen and off screen with his character's sexuality. I even remember hearing on Jenna and Kevin's podcast that they sort of freaked Court out when they ran up to him and told him that he was probably gonna be Kurt's boyfriend because he just didn't know them and he was very confused about it. And allegedly the character of Sam was written to be Kurt's love interest, and you can guess it, Blaine was meant to be with Quinn. His season 2 arc was pretty good, especially considering the fact that he was a recurring character and got way more depth at that point than even Mike, Tina, or Mercedes. There's an ongoing joke that the core 6 girls on the show belong to the I Dated or Kissed Sam Evans club, and it's hilarious. In season 2, he started out as the love interest for Quinn and a sort of like a rival for Finn, which, may I say, quickly flopped when the writers decided to retract the whole maybe give other people a chance thing. His relationship with Quinn was really wholesome, but just like most relationships on the show, they had to go end it in a messy way. He then became Santana's beard and would eventually start seeing Mercedes on the low after going on a group prom thing with her and Rachel. Season 3 rolls around and he's nowhere to be seen. Court allegedly decided to walk away from the show because he thought that he was going to be promoted to series regular in the 3rd season, but Ryan told him that he'd have to wait. I guess they eventually hashed it out and came to an agreement because he returns in the 8th episode, Hold On to 16. Fans were really excited for him to come back, and I was one of those fans. Immediately, they picked back the Sam Sadie's romance and actually gave us a good slow burn romance that, in my opinion, wouldn't get better than in season 3. My assumption is that after all the drama that, you know, they got back together and then they broke up amicably because like when season 4 rolls around, around, I don't remember there being that much talk around them. Like it just kind of like fizzled out, I guess. It directly switched over to Sam and Brittany. I might be biased here, but I absolutely did not like their relationship. I was / still am a huge Brittana fan and a Sam Sadie's fan too, and I absolutely hated this pairing. It was so annoying how they were both so dumb. Like, I'm sorry, and I'll get back to why in a moment, but let's talk about season 5. In season 5, Nurse Penny joins the school and sort of starts dating Sam. She was meant for Finn, but due to his untimely passing, they decided to keep her on the show and have her be with Sam instead. Again, might be biased here, but this relationship wasn't really all that interesting, and most fans felt that way back then too. A few episodes later, he went to New York and had a moment with Rachel. He later made out with Tina in Trio, then went to New York for modeling and shortly started dating Mercedes again. Dare I say it again, even though I shipped them, at this point, it was a lot less exciting than it was the first time around. It just didn't give. Like, I don't know, I'm a sucker for a slow burn romance, but I'm glad that they didn't ruin this relationship in the long run. Now, on to his ultimate relationship on screen. Rachel Berry. This one was literally the line that they really just didn't need to cross, honestly. It did nothing for either of their characters. I mean, the fact that the few minutes of interaction with Jesse completely overshadowed most of theirs that season is enough evidence. There wasn't anything particularly wrong with them being together. It's more specifically that there wasn't anything there, like no salt, no sugar, no pepper, nothing. I know I've spent quite some time discussing his relationships, but in this fandom, his relationships are very much brought up in discourses around him. So yeah, but now onto his character development. Now, his character development is one thing that really irks me and pretty much the entirety of the fandom. I mean, his character development is a great example of Flanderization, which is defined as the progressive exaggeration of a single trait or set of traits of a fictional character until it overtakes all other characterizations. Sam was never a genius, and his character was basically introduced to us making the worst puns and jokes. However, the level of idiocy we would come to see in season 4 was just downright insulting. Pair that with him dating Brittany, and the entire comedy of her character just dies with it. Why? Like, who thought this was a good idea? The pairing of two not very bright characters has worked before. For example, Jackie and Kelso from That 70s Show. And eventually there was also significant development there. Sam and Brittany at one point were just a reminder of everything wrong with the show. You could tell that these were not the same writers anymore. They took that one naive trait of Sam and made it his whole character, and again, could have worked had he been introduced like that in a satirical Glee of season 1 or even season 2, but just not in season 4. As a result, we never really knew what was going on with other aspects of his life anymore. In season 2, he stood out with his homeless storyline, and fine, his parents let him move back to Lima and be with the Hudsons, but for how long? Did he stay with them until he graduated? They never went back over any of that. Him being dyslexic, just mentioned once and never to be heard again. Did he fully give up on football because he couldn't join in season 3? Those things were all important aspects of his character that were simply overlooked to turn him into comic relief. The storyline that made the most sense was him choosing to leave New York and go back to Lima and assist with football, because if you look at a season 2 character, the modeling thing never made sense, honestly. I will say this though, he is a kind and loving character, and he has shown on multiple occasions that he's willing to put others before himself, and he always treats the girls he's with complete respect and decency. And yes, I know the bar is very low, but it's Glee we're talking about here.
You can refuse to be the victim. Prejudice is just ignorance, Kurt, and you have a chance right now to teach him.
So when we first met Blaine in season 2, he was like a breath of fresh air, you know? He was the second openly gay male character on the show, and he had this undeniable charisma. He was confident, kind, and mature, and a true mentor for Kurt. He was not too flamboyant, but not too butch either, as Darren Criss, the actor who played him, described him. At the time, Blaine was like everyone's dream guy. He was just perfect, charming, and just the right balance of quirky and cool. I mean, we were all obsessed with his Teenage Dream rendition. In the earlier seasons, Blaine's main role was to support Kurt's growth. He was like a beacon of hope for Kurt, showing him that it's possible to overcome bullying and be happy and proud of who you are. And even when the relationship became romantic, Blaine continued to be a significant part of Kurt's journey. By the time season 3 came around, they had Blaine transfer to McKinley, which is basically the beginning of the end for his character. In my opinion, that was when he became more of a prop for Kurt's story rather than being his own person, and his fashion sense, well, just horrible creative choice. Over the course of the show, the writers kept adding layers of insecurity to Blaine's character, which led to some pretty messed up actions on his part. Remember when he cheated on Kurt in season 4? Like, that was a punch in the gut for all of those who adored their relationship. This was the same guy who sang "It's Not Right, But It's Okay" because Kurt was texting someone, which, to be fair, cheating is defined by a lot of things, doesn't only have to be physical, but it was always so hypocritical when characters like Finn and Blaine would cry about something and then go on and do it themselves. And then in season 5, he was super jealous of Kurt and even tried to sabotage him. But the ultimate character assassination came in season 6 when Blaine started dating Karofsky, Kurt's former tormentor. Like, who does that? It just didn't make any sense, and it felt like the writers were just trying to create drama for the sake of it. The thing with Blaine's character is that he was initially created to serve Kurt's story, and when he became a fan favorite, the writers had to scramble to find a way to keep him relevant. Unfortunately, this meant that his character suffered a lot in terms of consistency and development. It's honestly a shame because Blaine had so much potential, but he ended up being a victim of the show's need for drama and conflict. When you look at Blaine as a whole, he's not an unrealistic character. In fact, his insecurities and actions are pretty relatable. The problem lies in how the writers handled his character development, making him a shadow of the person he once was. If only they had let Blaine stay at Dalton Academy and maintain his original charm, maybe he wouldn't have been reduced to a whiny and unlikable character just for the sake of advancing the plot. Sometimes, even though someone is a fan favorite, it's not a reason to keep him around, because once a character has served their purpose and you keep him around, you almost always end up undoing all the progress you created. Blaine was supposed to be a year older than Kurt, but when they wanted to keep him around, they decided to age him down not only 1 year, but 2 years. So you're telling me that all wisdomy Blaine from season 2 was supposed to be a 15-year-old sophomore instead of a senior? There's still also a lot of resentment with how the show basically became the Rachel Blaine show. Like, I get it, Darren Criss is amazing and I'm such a huge fan of him and everything he does, but man, does it suck what they did to his character. And oh my god, I can't believe I almost moved on without talking about this. How annoying was it in the episode of season 2, Blame It on the Alcohol, I think, where he had a moment with Rachel, which would have sparked such a good conversation on bisexuality, but then they turned around and confirmed all of the nonsense biphobic crap that Kurt was saying. I'll die on the hill that Blaine should have been bi. Like, I'm sorry. Other than that, like, I loved his friendship with Sam, and obviously his character had his cool moments, but this is generally the discourse you'll get around him. I mean, it's all fun. Like, Darren Criss is so talented that, like, at least even though he was like shoved down our throats in the later season, his performances were great and, you know, mostly enjoyable, and he really liked doing live performances, which the other actors didn't really do. Also, another thing that I'm realizing now is that they also mentioned all these weird things about his parents, but we don't know, like, was his dad like against him? Did he end up making up with him? You know, his mom was at his wedding. You know, all these like little things that were just like, this character is in our face, so, you know, at least make things clear with him. You know what I mean? But I mean, just like Santana, he was still an amazing character, and it's crazy to think that he wasn't meant to be on the show either and would end up being one of the 2 only couples to get married on the show. Like, that's kind of crazy. But yeah, I mean, we can't deny the talent of Darren Criss and just that still lovable charm that he brought to Blaine Anderson, especially in the 2nd season. I mean, he was just amazing.
Here's how I see it. I know I'm the hottest bitch in this joint. If I was a country, my flag would be a big fist giving the rest of the world a finger, and this would be my national anthem.
Lauren Zaises, played by Ashley Fink, was initially introduced as a minor character in the 1st season, but gained a more significant role in the 2nd season. In many ways, Lauren was a breath of fresh air in the show, as she didn't fit the typical high school stereotype and added her own unique flavor to the new directions. First and foremost, Lauren's character broke away from the conventional mold of what we often saw in high school dramas as a plus-sized confident and tough woman. She challenged the societal expectations and brought a distinct perspective to the group. Her unapologetic attitude and strong sense of self-worth was so refreshing to watch, especially in a show that frequently explored themes of self-acceptance and personal growth, but was sometimes very one-dimensional about it. Now, one of the most notable aspects of Lauren's character was a relationship with Puck. Puck, known as the bad boy of the show, found himself attracted to Lauren, and their romance added a fun, fresh dynamic to Glee. Instead of Puck pursuing the typical popular girl, we saw him genuinely interested in Lauren, who didn't fit, again, in the traditional mold of attractiveness in the media at the time and still today. The relationship also showed Lauren's ability to stand her own ground and demand respect, as she made it clear that she wouldn't settle for anything less than what she deserved. Another great creative decision they took in season 2 of Glee was making her an actual competitor to Quinn's prom royalty instead of just making her a joke. Like, she actually had a chance of winning and Quinn was actually scared of her. And I thought that it was great because they could have just made it like, oh yeah, totally, Lauren's a risk. But instead they actually were like, yeah, no, she could win because guess what? She's also got it. You know, I don't know. It was just nice to see. Of course, no character analysis would be complete without mentioning some criticisms surrounding Lauren's portrayal. Obviously, some viewers felt that the show occasionally leaned too heavily on her size for humor rather than exploring her character's depth and potential. You know, while Glee certainly attempted to promote body positivity through Lauren's character, there were instances where it fell short and her role could have been further developed. But again, 50,000 characters, I get it. Lauren Zicey's character in Glee was a fun addition to the show and again challenged conventional high school stereotypes. Her confident and tough demeanor, as well as her relationship and involvement in various subplots, contributed to the show's themes of inclusivity, self-acceptance, and breaking down norms. I was so sad to see her not be brought back for season 3. I loved her character, and especially I loved it when she beat Santana's ass. Just kidding, not really. Season 2 brought us the Dalton Academy Warblers as a new rival, and I'll touch more on the Warblers later, but in my honest opinion, they were a pretty tame rival. Not because they weren't evil in this season, but because their competition performances kind of felt like they all kind of felt the same to me, sort of like the early days of the Barton Bellas in Pitch Perfect. Vocal adrenaline was still there, led by guest star Sunshine Corazon, a Filipino exchange student. She would have a 3-episode arc and clearly a big impact because the crack house discourse is one that will never die down in the fandom, I think. Also, every single one of her performances ate down. Like, yeah, no wonder Rachel was shaking in her flats. There was also Cheyenne Jackson as the new vocal adrenaline coach, and then there was Carl. John Stamos played Carl, and he was Emma's love interest and a dentist. He was just another addition to the show to unnecessarily drag on the Wemma drama, but I'll always appreciate how iconic his episode was because of the Brittany performances. By the way, that episode must have costed a lot because all the Brittany songs they used, plus John Stamos and a cameo from Britney Spears herself, like, wow, budget. Holly Holiday was introduced in the episode Substitute. She, along with Jessie and April, became the most recurring guests on the show. Gwyneth Paltrow would even end up performing at one of the Glee Tour concerts and would even get married to show creator Brad Falchuk.
Okay, everyone give it up for Sugar for paying for a final net and cover buttons.
I love the sound of applause, even if I have to buy it.
First things first, Sugar Mata is introduced in the 3rd season as a wealthy, self-diagnosed, on the spectrum girl. This aspect of her character generated some controversy and mixed feelings amongst fans and critics alike. While it's important to acknowledge that Glee is known for pushing boundaries and tackling difficult topics, it's also crucial to recognize that the portrayal of Sugar's self-diagnosis wasn't always handled with the sensitivity it deserved. That being said, let's discuss the other aspect of Sugar's character that made her a somewhat memorable addition to the show. So Sugar was initially introduced as a terrible singer with no sense of rhythm, but was completely oblivious to her lack of talent. This trait made her character endearing and comedic to some fans, especially when she auditioned for the New Directions with her disastrous rendition of Big Spender. Her confidence in her abilities, despite her apparent lack of talent, provided a good project's source of humor. Her wealthy background played a significant role in her character development. As a daughter of Al-Mata, a successful businessman, Sugar was used to getting what she wanted. So when she was initially rejected from the New Directions due to her lack of singing ability, her father created a rival glee club called the Trouble Tones, led by Shelby Cochran. This existence of the rival group ended up adding another layer of tension to the show and being a huge part of season 3A. She never became a standout vocalist. It seemed like her involvement in the Glee Club helped her develop a sense of camaraderie and friendship with her fellow members. She eventually became more integrated into the group, participating in performances and blending her unique quirks with the rest of the team. Also, I really love that they just had Santana come in and be like, yeah, I don't care if your dad opened this Glee Club, you suck and you're not singing. Sway in the background. I mean, in the end, she did get what she wanted. I mean, she ended up in the New Directions anyway. Like, it's funny that it took her making her dad create a whole Glee Club for her to like get what she wanted, but she eventually did, which is really funny. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. In terms of romance, she had this like brief yo-yo thing between Artie and Rory. Listen, just like most of the recurring characters, she never really gets any substantial storyline of her own, and she's often just relegated to the background. At least her presence added humor to the show, you know, like it never hurts.
My name's Rory Flanagan. I'm a foreign exchange student from Ireland, and I love everything about America, especially NASCAR, your half-black president, and Victoria's Secret catalogs.
Rory's first appearance is in the episode Pot of Gold. First off, Rory's introduction to the show was pretty silly in itself. Damien McGinty, who portrayed Rory, was one of the winners of the reality TV show The Glee Project, which gave him the opportunity to join the cast of Glee. He was originally promised a 7-episode arc, but ended up appearing in a total of 17 episodes. He was an exchange student from Ireland whom I think lived with Brittany, so his charming accent and innocent demeanor made him instantly likable by many fans. His naivete about American customs and culture provided comic relief in its own way, like Peanut Butter Thing or him not knowing about dodgeball. That was so cute and adorable. Finn took Rory under his wing and helped him acclimate to life at McKinley High. Their friendship was an essential part of Rory's development on the show, as it allowed him to integrate into the New Directions and form new bonds with the other members. Rory's romantic storylines also played a somewhat significant part in his arc. He developed a crush on Brittany, which made him a target for Santana. Santana was really mean to him, but he was also really weird and icky too. I mean, he clearly knew that Brittany was somewhat not completely there, because she actually believed that he was a leprechaun and was somehow playing into it to eventually sleep with her. Like, that was his end goal. And unfortunately for him, Santana was already there, so that never worked out for him. Yeah. After season 3 arc, he basically went back to being a background character and would end up leaving the show pretty quietly.
Santana Lopez asked me if the God Squad would sing a love song for Brittany S. Pierce, and after thinking and praying about it, I knew there was only one right answer. Absolutely. Love is love, man.
Joe first comes into the picture as a Christian homeschool teenager. Samuel Larson, who portrayed Joe, was actually also one of the winners of the Glee Project, which earned him the spot on Glee. He was initially promised a 7-episode arc as well, but Joe's character ended up sticking around for a total of 19 episodes. The main aspect of Joe's character was his faith. We first met him as a member of the God Squad, so he was already friends with Mercedes, Sam, and Quinn. You know what? Now that I'm talking about him, I can't for the life of me remember how he joined the New Directions, but like, I guess because like just once he got there, he blended right in. His first main storyline revolved around his conflict with singing to a same-sex couple, to which obviously his conclusion was that it doesn't matter who you love, love is love. That was a really big episode too, because it was the first time that the fans got a Brittana on-screen kiss, so his character was really well received. In terms of relationships, Joe's friendship with Quinn was the main and only significant one he would have on the show. They knew each other for quite a while because of their club, but their connection deepened when Quinn was involved in a car accident that left her temporarily paralyzed, and Joe helped her through her recovery in rehab and whatnot. There was a really funny scene where he like he was helping her and he had like a hard on. Very funny. Just like many of the other storylines, this one just sort of faded. Like they had a fling, but by the finale, Quinn was cuddling with Puck again. So yeah, Joe's musical performances on the show were also a highlight for his character. His soulful voice and his, guitar skill / vibe shown in numbers like Stereo Hearts, Saving All My Love, and he was also really good in Night Fever and gave Darren Criss a run for his money. These performances not only showcase Larson's talent, but also help solidify Joe's place within the new direction, as his unique sound and style brought something fresh to the group. After season 5, he's just gone, and Sue mentions it in passing, but that's just sort of it. But also he does come back in, I think, the last episode and talks about how Sue shaved his head. That was funny. Personally, I liked his character, but I wasn't really attached to him because at that point I wasn't getting attached to any new character. In season 3, the first guest star would be Glee Project's finalist Lindsay Pierce as Harmonica. Nene Leakes would join the cast as Sue's well-deserved new rival, Roz Washington. She would appear in 6 episodes of season 3, 3 of season 4, 3 of season 5, and 1 in the final season. She was a fun addition and honestly didn't cause too much turbulence to the group. Grant Gustin would come in as the new and evil face of the Warblers and also personal enemy to Kurt Hummel. Honestly, he was an excellent villain. If not for anything else, his smooth criminal performance would have saved him even if he was a mediocre character. I will say this though, for two canonically gay character, there was an awful lot of chemistry in that scene. After we had Ricky Martin come in for an episode, Spanish episode, and then next we had actor and big brother to Blaine, Cooper Anderson, played by Matt Bomer. Terrible character and terrible episode in my opinion, but moving on. Season 3 also followed the fans' request to see more parents, and as a result we got appearances from Jeff Goldblum and Brian Stokes Mitchell as Rachel's fathers. Gloria Estefan also made a guest appearance as Santana's mom. Lastly, we had Whoopi Goldberg, who played Carmen Tipido. She was the dean at NIADA and would play a critical part in both Rachel and Kurt's development. After season 3, she would appear in 2 more episodes of season 4 and 1 in season 5 where Rachel quits NIADA.
Ever since I was a kid, I would play this game where I'd pretend I was a different person. The person that I dreamed of being. The real me. I even have a different name. Unique.
Introduced in the 3rd season, Unique was one of the first transgender characters on a major network show, and she was played by the immensely talented Alex Newell. She first appeared as a member of Vocal Adrenaline and was introduced as Wade, a shy and insecure guy who felt more comfortable as Unique, her true self. Glee never shied away from tackling tough issues, and Unique's story was no exception. Throughout her time of the show, she struggled with acceptance, identity, and the challenges that come with being a trans teenager. Now, actually, one of the highlights about season 4 and the new kids was Unique's friendship with Marley. The two girls bonded over their shared experiences as outsiders, and their dynamic was really heartwarming. Unique was always there for Marley, even when she was going through her own struggles. You could really feel the genuine connection between the two characters, And of course, we can't forget about her style. Her wardrobe was definitely a reflection of her bold and beautiful personality. But of course, there were bumps on the road. Of course, remember that catfish storyline? So Unique created a fake online persona to get closer to Ryder, one of the guys in New Directions, and that whole thing just blew up in her face. It felt like a very interesting choice for the writers to make. I wouldn't say it took away from Unique's journey. A lot of the fans complained because it made her seem manipulative, and well, some people thought it wasn't true to her character, but I thought it made sense. Like, as much as the storyline made me uncomfortable, I did think it made sense that, in 2012 you might have gotten harassed a little less because some kids were scared of getting in trouble because institutions and stuff were doubling down, but it didn't mean that you weren't still scared to fully express yourself because you were most likely going to be rejected when the adults weren't looking, and sometimes the adults were the ones who were doing the hurting as well. My point is that even though it sucked that they tried to portray her as manipulative, I don't know, maybe they didn't, it still made sense that she would do that because obviously as a trans kid she's lonely and you have a crush on a guy and you feel like you have no chance with him because you're a trans kid. And let's not forget that he was a little transphobic to her in a few episodes before that. So it all just sort of made sense that it happened. Like after this, she revealed that she had a crush on Ryder, and obviously he was pretty dismissive of her feelings. I mean, it's a shame that the writers didn't explore more of that storyline, because it would have been interesting to see how they would have navigated, you know, just the dating world of a trans kid in high school. I know that things changed after Corey passed away, and that they just shifted what they were going to do in season 5, because you could see that they were trying to go somewhere. Like if you look at the end of their performance in season 4, they had a moment. I don't know what that meant, but I think that the writers were trying to go somewhere with that, but unfortunately we'll never know. In season 5, she also had another pretty important storyline. There was the whole bathroom situation. As a trans kid, which bathroom should she use? She identifies as a girl, as a woman, and some kids at school have a problem with it, and it sparked this whole debate, which, you know what, is still a very relevant conversation today. And well, unfortunately for her, Mr. Shu chose to prioritize twerking over her having a bathroom, and they decided to make a joke out of it and put a porta potty in the middle of the choir room. So that happened. But you know, one thing that they at least did right was the musical numbers. And you know, Unique, she had a killer voice and killer stage presence that demanded attention. Some of her standout performances, for example, were If I Were a Boy, Boogie Shoes, which was a wild and amazing way to be introduced on the show. You know, something else that was interesting about Unique's character was the way she interacted with other characters on the show and the way they reacted to her. It kind of held up a mirror to society's attitudes towards people like her at the time. You know, there were characters like Kurt and Marley who were supportive and accepting of her from the start, and then you turn around and there were characters again like Sue Sylvester who couldn't just seem to wrap their heads up around it. Again, the bathroom dilemma is still a very relevant topic in today's society, and it still stirs a lot of controversy every time it's brought up. So in the grand scheme of things, Unique was a trailblazer, and her character played an important role in pushing the boundaries of representation on television. Although there were moments on the show where things could have been done better for her character, it's still undeniable that she had a significant impact on Glee, its fans, and the media landscape as a whole.
You guys are the Glee Club, right? Hi. I'm gonna try out. I'm a sophomore. My name is Marley.
Marley Rose, played by Melissa Benoist, was introduced in the episode titled The New Rachel. Her first performance on the show was adjacent to Rachel. Now, I think we can all agree that the Glee writers shot themselves in the foot by starting her off on the narrative of replacing a major character. If you watched the show episode by episode while it aired, you probably thought that they were trying to replace Rachel with Marley, and that was not working. Rachel Berry had perhaps one of the most unforgettable entrances in TV history, with some of the most quotable things from Glee coming from her first monologue. Now put that against Marley's entrance, where she innocently walks to the Glee Club members at lunch who almost but ignore her, and you realized how little impact our first impression of her was. Unfortunately, with Marley and most of the season 4 additions, really, we didn't get a lot to work with. We never really got to go in depth with their characters, as most storylines were either mishandled or downright dropped in favor of others. We did learn that Marley had some difficulty making friends in the past, partially because of her shyness, but mostly due to the cruelty of kids in schools. Her mom was not only overweight, but she worked as the school lunch lady. We know for a fact that Marley was insecure about her low socioeconomic status, as she demonstrated when her mom would sew high-end clothing tags on her secondhand clothes, or when she would hide her free lunch tickets. Now, we all know that Kitty is in large part at fault for everything that went down with Marley in season 4. However, there's a lot of evidence that shows that this is something she had always been struggling with. The fear of ending up like her mother, you know, being raised by a single mother, most likely gave Marley a feeling of rejection and low self-esteem. And also, like most people, she probably had negative connotations about weight and how it correlated with happiness and success in life. Not having friends, not having money, or not having a father most likely gave her a negative relationship with food. Kitty, probably being an insecure person as well, saw this and brought it out onto a larger scale. Listen, when something's in your head, it's one thing, and you might debate with yourself that you're overthinking it. When someone mentions it in the real world, it becomes reality and confirms your bias, because you sort of just think to yourself, other people can see it too, so it must be real. Regardless of whether or not Kitty triggered a more severe level of eating disorder, which I obviously think she did. I think this is something that Marley would have most likely had to deal with anyway. Maybe not to the scale, but she might have had a negative relationship with food anyway. Her season 5 Katie or Gaga storyline is one the people in the fandom still feel very strongly about. And I noticed that a lot of people, even when it comes to the ones who aren't Marley fans, are really protective over her when it comes to that. It's very interesting. I mean, she obviously had an eating disorder and she didn't feel confident in her body, but I'm almost 99% sure that if she wasn't having problems with Jake in that episode and she was in a good place mentally, she probably would have tried something else, or she would have talked to Mr. Shu. But obviously her protests came from somewhere different. Like, yeah, obviously she isn't comfortable in her body and her boyfriend is pressuring her to go further than she wants to, but at the same time, I don't know, when she wore that hero leotard and all of that, like, I think she had good days and bad days, and that was just a bad day. But obviously Mr. Shu should have been more understanding. Like, there's no argument there. In other aspects as well, Marley has low self-esteem. The biggest example of this was how she was willing to quit the Glee Club because her songs weren't chosen in a songwriting contest. I get being bummed out and losing a little motivation, but to go as far as quitting the only place where you felt like you could be yourself because your first external venture didn't work out is kind of a lot. It just proves that her foundations weren't solid and that she had a lot more growing up to do. In terms of relationships, she formed this cute little bond with the other season 4 newbies. At the time, you could really tell that she was the glue of their relationships. She had a love triangle thing with Jake and Ryder, but obviously liked Jake more. She had a really good bond with Unique. Also, I'd like to point out her friendship with Finn. Finn and Marley also had a really cute and wholesome relationship. Now, if you were on Tumblr somewhere around 2012, 2013, then you remember all the Farley shippers. Lots of people were rooting for Finn and Marley to be together, and I can't even tell you the number of Finchel jump shippers from this era. It was wild. But I mean, come on, like, no, I mean, that would have been completely illegal. I mean, even though they had like 2-year difference, I don't know, I don't remember, but you know, I wouldn't put it past the Glee writers. And yes, I'm very much referring to Puck and Kitty. But all of that aside, I got more of a mentor mentee brother and sister vibe from them than anything else, and I don't think even the writers would have gone there, especially since Finn was going to be with Nurse Penny if Corey hadn't passed. Anyway, I know that Marley is a very widely hated character. At least at the time, she was really, really hated. It's calmed down a little bit now. Some people like her more. I think the issue with Marley is that, again, the writers that had come on season 4 wrote a normal human being with normal quirks. Listen, she would have never fit into season 1 Glee or season 2 Glee. Like, she came when Glee became a completely different show, and her biggest crime was being a normal person in a pool of otherwise psychotic human beings. That's really it. Like, yeah, of course she's boring. She's boring by Glee standards, you know, and maybe she would have been boring somewhere else, I don't know, but she's not a bad person. She's not a bad character. You know, I see why some people like her. She's adorable, but yeah, definitely a big mistake for the Glee writers to introduce her and sort of imply that she'd be the new Rachel. Very bad idea.
My whole life I've never felt like I fit in. Not anywhere.
Why?
I'm half white, half black, half Jewish. And just in case I forget, someone always reminds me.
Jake Puckerman, played by Jacob Artis, made his debut on Glee in the 4th season as well. He was introduced as the younger half brother of Puck. Jake's character went through significant evolution throughout the series, facing various challenges and developing meaningful relationships with other characters. At first, Jake was portrayed as your typical rebellious and aggressive character, which mirrored his older brother's initial characterization. He was known for getting into fights and having a difficult time fitting in with his peers. One of the primary issues surrounding Jake's character was his struggle with his identity. As a biracial individual, Jake faced both internal and external pressures about his identity. His mixed race background led him to feel like an outsider, which often manifested in his rebellious behavior. This struggle with his identity was a critical aspect of his character development. Jake's character was also heavily involved in romantic storylines. His relationship with Marley Rose was a central storyline throughout season 4. His relationship allowed viewers to see a softer, more vulnerable side of Jake as he navigated the ups and downs of young love. The relationship was riddled with issues such as trust, infidelity, and insecurity, but when you think about it, it was one of the longest, most stable, ish relationships on the show. So the dynamic between Jake and his half-brother Puck was another essential aspect of his character development. Despite their initial rivalry and tension, the two characters eventually formed a strong bond. This brotherly relationship allowed both characters to grow and learn from each other. Additionally, Jake's interactions with other characters on the show contributed to their development as well. His relationship with characters like Ryder and Kitty allowed the series to delve into the complexities of friendship and loyalty, which further enriched the narrative and provided opportunities for multiple characters to evolve. You know, these friendships were really important for Jake's development because, again, he came in talking about not fitting in anywhere, and that's why he had sort of this attitude. And finally, in the Glee Club, he had a group of people who obviously accepted him for who he was. And, you know, additionally, his character also evolved as a performer. Like all the other characters on Glee, he discovered his passion for singing and dancing through his involvement with the new directions. For me, the most eye-roll thing surrounding Jake's character was the somewhat cliched portrayal of the bad boy with a heart of gold trope. This trope can be engaging and provide opportunities for character growth, but it also runs the risk of becoming predictable and one-dimensional. And although the show managed to, add depth to Jake's character through his relationship and struggles with identity, there were times when his character fell into the familiar patterns of the bad boy stereotype, which were the least interesting parts about him. Okay, this is your second warning. If you don't feel comfortable with this character either, feel free to skip it. I probably time-stamped it anyway, so you'll probably know it's coming, but just in case something happens, I'm just warning you right now that I'll be discussing Ryder's character now, so feel free to skip this part if you don't want to hear it. So Ryder was one of the other additions of season 4. The character was created as a result of Blake Jenner winning the second season of the Glee Project. When he was first introduced, he was supposed to bring this new boy next door energy, the same sort that Sam did in season 2. Just like pretty much every other male on the show who went to McKinley, he was on the football team right before joining Glee. Very creative, guys. For someone who was promised a 7-episode arc, this guy ended up having more storylines than even people like Harry who were on the show since the start. So his first main thing was his rivalry with Jake over Marley. He would try out for the play and get the lead, and so would bond with Marley over that during this time. In the episode Dynamic Duets, he gets into it with Jake, and then we find out that he's dyslexic. Before this, his character never knew what was wrong with him. He revealed that no matter how hard he would try to better his grades, it never reflected it. So after Finn found out about this, he took him to a specialist, and then he was diagnosed and started getting the help he needed. Because Jake cared enough to look after him and tell Finn about him, he ended up feeling indebted and decided to back off Marley. For most of the season after that, he suppressed his feelings, but then ended up caving and kissing her. That created tension between him and Jake, and then later with him and Unique, who attacked him for sabotaging her friend. This started the feud between him and Unique, and he ends up misgendering her. Lo and behold, the two of them were talking the whole time, and Jake had no idea because Unique was catfishing him as Katie. Unique as Katie would then go on and make Ryder realize where he messed up, and he'd end up apologizing to everyone. During the shooting star, he ended up getting really aggressive when he started to suspect that someone in the Glee Club was actually the one catfishing him. He became so paranoid that Marley ended up confessing instead of Unique, but Unique would end up confessing, and you can guess it, he rejected her. Now, through all this drama, we also find out that he was assaulted as a kid by his babysitter, and instead of being supportive, the boys in the club were disgusting and dismissive. The girls were the ones who were really there for him, especially Kitty. Now, I know a lot of people get angry about the guy's reactions, but I swear it's actually 1,000% accurate on how literally almost guy would react to at the time, especially. But yeah, at the end of the day, for a 1-season arc, his character got quite a few storylines. Even in season 5, his annoying love triangle drama stirred up again before they eventually all left. That was really annoying and just not necessary.
I invested everything into Glee Club, and what did it get me? They all deserted me.
When we first met Kitty, she was your stereotypical mean cheerleader, similar to what Quinn was at the beginning of the series. She quickly established herself as the new antagonist, taking every opportunity to insult and undermine her fellow Glee Club members, especially Marley. Kitty's mean girl persona could be traced back to her background. Growing up in a religious household, she had a strict upbringing that led her to be judgmental and intolerant of others. This aspect of her character is highlighted in the episode Lights Out, where she revealed that she was raised to believe in the literal interpretation of the Bible. Through the 4th season, Kitty's character began to evolve as she started spending more time with the Glee Club members. She started to form genuine friendships with some of them. Her character arc is most evident in her relationship with Marley, whom she initially bullied but later became friends with after realizing the damage she caused. One of the major turning points in Kitty's character development is in the school shooting episode, Shooting Star. In this episode, Kitty confessed to Marley that she was responsible for her eating disorder by altering her clothes to make her believe she was gaining weight. This confession marked a significant moment of vulnerability for Kitty as she set the stage for her redemption arc. She also began to form a bond with Ryder, which ended up going nowhere, but she did reveal that she was assaulted as a kid, which deeply affected her growing up. In season 5, Kitty continued to grow as a character. She became more of a team player and even started a romantic relationship with Artie. At this point, her softened demeanor was a far cry from the antagonistic role she played in the introduction. By season 6, Kitty had come a long way from being the mean cheerleader we first met, and her character in general was just much more compassionate and understanding. Even though, of course, she still retained some of her snarky wit, she had developed into a more mature and well-rounded character. Comparing Kitty to other characters like Santana, Rachel, and Quinn, we can see that Glee has a penchant for creating complex female characters who initially appear antagonistic but ultimately show vulnerability and growth throughout the series. Now, the thing with Kitty's redemption arc is that people have a hard time getting over the stuff she did. I mean, people already didn't like her at the beginning because they thought she was a cheap copy of Quinn, but causing or triggering, if you will, Marley's eating disorder was just something the fans, or the majority of the fans, just couldn't come back from. Personally, it was always just weird to me because I could see the moments where the writers were trying to portray it in a satirical way, but at that point, it just wasn't passing that way anymore. I mean, it's just like the crack house thing. They were obviously trying to be satirical, they were obviously trying to be funny, but it's almost like the way that the whole thing was constructed just made it that like it can't be funny because of the real life consequences. Anyway, it didn't really matter how the fandom felt about Kitty. Becca had joined the Leah Darren group of Ryan faves, and so she wasn't going anywhere. Alright, major guests in season 4 were Kate Hudson as NIADA professor Cassandra July, who hated Rachel Berry, but then suddenly didn't anymore. There was also Brody, who was Rachel's love interest up until the last leg of season 4. He was actually an impactful character and the only outer love interest who would sort of get a story arc. We also got Sarah Jessica Parker as Vogue editor, whose main interactions would be with Kurt and sometimes with Rachel. Both guest stars would only appear in season 4 and wouldn't come back. This season overall had the least amount of special guest stars. In season 5, we got younger guest stars. The first one was Danny, played by Demi Lovato. She would date Santana for a time in season 5 until they weren't dating anymore, I guess. Honestly, some of the guest stars at this point just started feeling very random. Anyway, so then Adam Lambert also came on the show, and at first he scared Kurt a little, and then they became good friends when Kurt recruited him for his band, Pamela Lansbury. Over at Lima, Nurse Penny came in and was Sam's love interest for like 2 episodes and then disappeared again. Tyra Banks made an appearance, and there was also Rachel's play director, who was Carlisle in Twilight and also in Supergirl, if I remember correctly. All right, so I'm just gonna do a season 6 kids rapid fire round. All right, so first up we have Roderick Meeks. He was the shy and kid with an incredible voice. Roderick's character arc was all about gaining self-confidence and learning to embrace his talents. He started off as an outsider, but with the help of the Glee Club, he found his place and even sort of became a leader. Next up, Jane Hayward. I don't know if I'm even saying this right, but Jane was a strong and ambitious young woman who initially tried to join the Warblers but faced gender discrimination. She eventually found her way to the New Directions, and she quickly became an essential member of the group. Then we have Spencer Porter, played by Marshall Williams. He was the openly gay football player who's not afraid to show his true colors. Kind of a dick, but yeah, Spencer's character was significant because he challenged stereotypes of both athletes and LGBTQ plus individuals. He was tough, confident, and talented, and his storyline highlighted the importance of being true to yourself, regardless of what others may think of you. His relationship with Roderick was also noteworthy, as they formed an unlikely friendship that helped both of them grow as individuals. Mason and Madison were the energetic and slightly creepy, in a fun way, twin siblings who brought a lot of enthusiasm and talent to the club. Their dynamic was unique because while they were extremely close, they also had their own individual goals and aspirations. Mason developed a crush on Jane, which ultimately helped him and Madison learn to be more independent from each other. The twins provided a mix of comic relief and heartfelt moments throughout the season. Then we have Ali Starr, played by Phineas O'Connell. He was the mysterious artistic guy who joined the New Directions later in the seasons. He didn't get as much development as the other characters, but his presence was still nice. And he also had a relationship with Spencer, which was a focal point, I think, in a couple episodes. Finally, we have Myron, who was portrayed by Josie Tota. It's such a funny character. His performance of Lose My Breath by Destiny's Child, oh my goodness, I still watch it and I laugh like it's the first time I saw it. Sue's reaction to him, Sue also just licking his ass because he's the superintendent's son, also funny. Him always trying to get in front of other people during the performances, such a great addition. I love that Glee decided to create his character. Yeah, iconic, very, very iconic.
Should we leave?
The band was an aspect of the show that has always bothered me to some extent. The show was very self-aware and would address messy things all the time, but had a pattern of not changing it regardless. It's very evident now that writing for 12 core characters was already more than the writers could handle, and I can't blame them because it's definitely easier said than done. However, the fact that the band members essentially assisted the Glee Club through pretty much every single performance that wasn't a dream sequence, and even performed with them at Sectional Season 3, yet were basically never spoken to by any member of the Glee Club, is beyond me. If this were real life, there is no way that these kids would have not been intermingled and friends with these band kids. The thing is, there were times where one or two characters were just focused on in a scene in the choir room and the other members were just chilling in the background and talking. Would it have been so hard to just have the Glee kids sometimes interact with them in the background like they disrespectfully did with Matt all the time anyway? Like, they always just sit there like seat warmers, ready to play any and every song at any given moment. The show more or less addressed it in several ways. Most of the time, Brad, the pianist, was the main focus, and eventually in season 6, during one of my favorite Sue rants ever, she finally brings it to William's attention. But I do wish that we got some clarity on these band members. Like, were they all sophomores too when the show started? I remember seeing them at graduation all in black shirts and pants. Like, I don't know, the whole band thing always bothered me, and it's honestly pointless trying to make sense of it because I'm 100% sure that the writers didn't even think of them either. But you know, yeah, it is what it is. There was this funny thing with Finn and the drummer though, where he would get annoyed sometimes when Finn would take over. That was hilarious. Don't know if many of you caught it, but moving on. Season 1 of Glee was a very standout season. In fact, you could watch the first 13 episodes and the story would be somewhat complete. You could sort of leave the rest to your imagination. That was sort of the point. In the earlier days, the cast would make plenty of jokes and take bets on when the show would get canceled because no one was sure that people would actually get what the show is about or if it would have reached the right audience in time. So they constructed the first 13 episodes in a way where viewers would still get a satisfying ending. Because of this narrative structure, you could feel a large shift between the original 13 and the back 9. Before we get into the difference, let's delve into the anatomy of season 1. The anatomy of the first season was the underdog story. It was truly about exploring the outcast, whether you felt like one on the inside or the outside. The underdog represented a lot of different aspects of life, from the identity some held inside, to people who are often left out or made fun of, to the people who felt like they weren't doing enough in their lives, or simply that their lives didn't matter. The opening of the director's cut, I believe, had Williams' Glee coach at the time talk about how Glee by its definition was about opening oneself up to joy. That's what season 1 tried to achieve through the power of music and camaraderie. Season 1 of Glee was about a small town in America. It was about a random high school in a relatively unknown Midwestern town and the lives of the people living there, how the place and environment affected these people. The story in the first season equally focused on both the adults and the students. Season 1 was a drama comedy tackling real life issues through satire and music. The music didn't define the story. The music was the cherry on top, the icing on the cake, the it factor that caught your attention and completed the puzzle. By this, I mean that the show obviously thrived because of the music, but it also gained the media's respect because of the topics it was tackling and because of the way it was tackling them. Perhaps if Freaks and Geeks was a musical, it might have been more mainstream, though that might be stretching it a little. Compared to the later seasons, the first season had a lot of existential threats happening to the group. There was the principal trying to cut them. This caused William to do all kinds of things like cover some costs and jump through all kinds of loopholes with Figgins. And despite all of that, they needed to place at regionals or else kaput. The entire school bullying them and discouraging them for being in the club, the ultimatums like in episode 8, the internal and quite frankly very annoying threats to quit the Glee Club by some rather annoying members, and the pressure of measuring up to vocal adrenaline, and the biggest one of all, Sue Sylvester. The main storylines in the first season, 1A, were Finn and Rachel's ambiguous thing, Puck and Quinn's whole ambiguous thing, as well as the pregnancy. Also, Finn and Quinn's relationship breakdown, Will and Sue's battle, Will and Emma's dynamic, Terry's fake pregnancy, and the impending doom of her marriage, as well as the inevitable fail between Ken and Emma, and of course, preparing for sectionals. Again, because the writers didn't know if there would be a season 1B, let alone a season 2, they concluded all the stories in the 13th episode. But then, surprise, surprise, the network ordered an additional 9 episodes, which meant they had to reopen the can of worms and reshuffle the drama. The first episode back gave that very, here's what really happens after the happily ever after. So now, of course, Rachel and Finn aren't doing too good. Puck and Quinn, disaster. William and Emma, well, forget about that. And remember how the club finally defeated Sue? Well, she's back now and stronger than ever. Oh, and now vocal adrenaline is a tangible entity because we've met Jesse St. James. The audience has enjoyed the back 9 a lot less because it felt like rehashing the same drama as the first half, but it still tackled a lot of new things and went deeper into the issues that were already discussed. Artie's disability was re-explored, and this time in a more personal level on how he reconciled with being disabled and what it meant for his life and his future. Post-divorce, William realized he was even more of a mess, so without surprise, he wasn't ready to be with Emma. We got to explore even more of Quinn's isolation due to the pregnancy. We finally got a Mercedes-centered story. Rachel would meet and get into a relationship with the leader of Vocal Adrenaline and find out her mother, biological mother, was none other than their coach, Shelby Cochran. That crush that Kurt comically had on Finn would get explored at a much deeper level and in a much less comical way. Kurt's sexuality in itself and his relationship with his father would also be re-explored. In terms of music, season 1 of Glee had the most diverse range of songs as well as great balance between genres. We had the obvious show tunes, we had hip hop and rap, we had some top 40s and pop songs, and the most famous Glee genre of all, classic rock. What made season 1 special, on top of being diverse and very well balanced, is that they introduced a whole new catalog of music to a new generation. Journey's Don't Stop Believing is one of the best examples. A lot of musical shows would fail because sometimes the music just wasn't meaningful enough, and because they would be cover songs of currently charting songs that we were already hearing everywhere. In any case, by taking old songs that our generation wasn't familiar with, there was still a flair of originality, and you couldn't argue whether these songs were good or not because they were songs that had dominated the charts in their time, or niche songs that were really good and just needed to be discovered by a bigger audience. On top of that, the song choices really meant something in the first season, and I'll circle back to that later. For the cinematography, the visual aesthetic was bright and colorful with high energy and an upbeat feel that reflected the show's musical and optimistic tone. The cinematography was often fast-paced with dynamic camera movements and creative editing that highlighted the musical numbers and the energy of the characters. The lighting was generally bright and cheerful, and the color correction had a warm and vibrant tone that enhanced the overall mood of the show. They also generally relied on diegetic lighting because they were mostly on real locations. The musical score was also very distinct. There were these a cappella tunes that would give us an immediate cue on what a scene would be about, and it was very distinct and almost unique to this season. And as well as like these very really cool remixed famous classical pieces and these old songs to like narrate scenes. So in conclusion, season 1 was campy, satirical, and most importantly self-aware. Somehow it managed to be both cartoonish but still more grounded than the later seasons. Will Schuster's passion for the Glee Club and his students was the driving force in the narrative. The feel of the season was optimistic and fresh as it set the stage for the rest of the series. I define season 2 as a teen drama of kids in a singing club, where season 1 of Glee somewhat attempted to maintain the quality of an ensemble cast. Season 2, as the episodes went on, left behind that quality of the first season. When this season first aired, there were 3 camps. The camp of people who hated the shift and saw it from the beginning. Then there was the camp of newcomers who, as far as they were concerned, this was Glee and they didn't know anything else. And then there were the fans who were overjoyed because the Cheerios and Kurt were finally going to shine, and also there were new guys. So where season 1 of Glee was about telling a story about opening oneself up to joy, this season became about navigating the struggles, emotions, and complexities of growing up as a teenager in high school. The Glee Club as a whole didn't have all the existential threats that it did in the first season. Sure, Sue was still there, and in some episodes the football players would throw a slushie here and there, but it stopped being as repetitive as season 1 was with all its conflicts. It basically lost that cartoony factor where the villains will do the same things in different episodes, but it's so creatively presented that you don't even notice it's the same thing over and over again. Season 2 became a classic teen drama where the story became about the drama and the relationship between the characters as they went through the year. In season 1, the character stories felt like peaks with a microscope that would get here and there, and we didn't know too much, and we never knew how serious or how far they'd push a story, while from season 2 on, we really focused on characters' issues that would, spread out over a series of episodes. Put it simply, the story was no longer about a Glee Club in a small town. It became a story about high school kids who happened to be in a Glee Club, navigating the complexities with their own personal ones. But as you watch this season, you'll notice a sort of pattern or benchmarks, if you will, that they sort of hit narratively. The second episode of the season would always be a tug of war between William and the kids about the assembly performance, which would result in a disaster, scandalous performance. This aspect would be skipped in the third season but would come back in season 4. The fifth episode would always be about the yearly school play. There was an attempt in season 1 with Cabaret, but it would lead nowhere. In season 2, we would get a more serious attempt at Rocky Horror, but due to its inappropriateness wouldn't lead to much. The later seasons would carry on this tradition. The 6th episodes would be mash-offs, and of course there was also some new traditions that started the season, like the holiday episodes and the Christmas episode, the Valentine's Day episodes, and the infamous prom episodes. Because of these traditions, the timeline of season 2 would make much more sense than the timeline of season 1. In the first season, there was a lot of difficulty understanding what time period, things were set in, which caused some storytelling errors. For one, if sectional was before winter break and regionals was somewhere around March, then when would Quinn have gotten pregnant unless she gave birth at 8 months, which would mean that she would have gotten pregnant in August anyway, or maybe she got pregnant over the summer. I don't know, but things like that basically. The introduction of the new characters in the season was great and would be the most integrated group of new characters the show would ever get. Everything else was always somehow rejected by the fans. In terms of tone, this season would be more real in certain aspects. Where the first season had a more optimistic energy, this one had a more emotional and somewhat less comically covered approach to things. Because the tone was much more serious with the characters, the competitions sort of took a backseat this season. The pressure to perform at the competition was a lot less heavy and felt a lot smaller in the grand scheme of things. The show would also introduce new rivals this season, the Warblers, and they would be the most consistent rivals to the New Directions. In some ways, the Warblers were better than Vocal Adrenaline, while in other ways weaker. It's pretty much agreed upon that Vocal Adrenaline was too big of a threat and shouldn't have been an Ohio or at least a Lima-based rival, but instead a further state, making them only meet for nationals of season 2. Bohemian Rhapsody, in terms of excellence and epicness, has never been topped on the show, and in fact was too big of a number for regionals. Now, nationals of season 2, on the other hand, it would have been an excellent way to assure them a number 1 spot, keep them as the epic villains for nationals, since they would always have to leave the Warblers behind to get to nationals anyway, and keep the pressure up. This would have also made Paradise by the Dashboard Light an excellent comeback number that would mimic a lot of what they would have seen in the previous nationals, and thus would tie all 3 stories together. All this to say that the Warblers were a weak-ass threat, and I would quite literally always roll my eyes when they acted like there was ever a chance for them to be ahead of them. Also, the whole Blazers thing got really old, but that's just me. So yeah, there was a noticeable shift on the focus on adult storylines. Mr. Shu was regarded as the heart of season 1, not only because of his heavily featured story, but also because of his dedication to making the Glee Club survive. And that menace only remaining as a comical threat, well, his presence fizzled out and he started becoming more of a weirdo who played favorites. Throughout season 2, one of the most engaging storylines revolved around the characters grappling with their sexuality amid the show's signature blend of camp and earnestness. Kurt was the only openly gay teenager at McKinley in the first season, but this season went deeper and explored what it actually meant to be a gay man in a conservative town. Viewers experienced the highs and the lows alongside him, from his blossoming romance with Blaine to the harsh reality of being verbally and especially physically assaulted by his bully, the closeted and conflicted Karofsky. This compelling arc spanned the entire season, powerfully capturing the real-life struggle of homophobia in high school. Another captivating storyline involved Santana, who underwent a beautiful journey of self-discovery and acceptance, initially denying her feelings for Brittany. Ultimately, Santana confronted her love for her. The arc stood out as a highlight of the season, especially considering Santana's beginnings in the previous season. The exploration of these characters' sexual identities added depth and realism to Glee, creating unforgettable moments that resonated with audiences. In terms of music, this element also majorly shifted. If season 1 was a comedy drama with music, season 2 was where the line between a show with music and a musical show became wobbly. Because of the success of the first season, everyone wanted their music on the show, and I guess it got overwhelming because the musical choices, though still very good, became significantly less sharp than in the first season. Because of this, we got way more top 40s than we needed to. There was also a bigger shift from classic rock, while show tunes did take a bigger space. One of the big and notable narrative shifts was how they performed original songs in not 1 but 2 competitions, and unsurprisingly lost the second time around, because how do you write a song the night before a competition and expect any good? But hey, don't get me wrong, the performances in this season were still epic and also iconic. Heads Would Roll, Thriller, was apparently a nightmare to film, but it was amazing. Pretty much the entire cast apparently got sick, and even though Born This Way by Gaga was very top 40 and didn't really need to be covered at that point, Glee took it and made it its own, and it's still regarded as one of the most impactful performances on the show. In terms of cinematography, the show's lighting darkened a bit, and there were a few reasons for this. Production got more money, which gave them an opportunity to rebuild everything on a soundstage in Paramount instead of having to drive to Long Beach. Most things were identical, but there were also, still some stark differences. Because this was a set, it was lit differently than an actual room. Natural and in-scene lighting is notorious for being different, and if you look at the choir room, you can see the chairs and the walls are closer to a brown color than a reddish one from season 1. Oh, and there's also a new location introduced. The tunes changed a bit, which contributed to the overall change and might have given the viewers a subliminal cue that things were different this time around. Overall, season 2 further developed the characters' personal relationships. Themes included body image, religion, acceptance, and sexuality. Glee, there was also a heavier push on romance and relationship pairings, which quite honestly was starting to feel a little incestuous. The feel of the season was more complex and emotionally charged as it delved into deeper, heavier themes and expanded the show's universe. Even though it rearranged the DNA of season 1 Glee, this season is equally as good, and some even consider it to be the best. On May 15, 2010, the cast would give their first North American tour performance at the Dodge Theater in Phoenix, Arizona. The first tour was just something fun they wanted to do and try out. It was a no-pressure situation. Since there were no expectation, there wasn't a structure built around the show, the cast members weren't sure whether to stay in character during the performances or not. Some did and others didn't. Apparently, the first show they did, they performed mini skits and all of that, but it was still dead silent in the crowd, and it wasn't until like the last song that people got up and started clapping. The first Glee tour would last 3 weeks, concluding on May 30th of the same year with 13 shows. The second tour was a whole other level. There would be 44 shows, and the tour would be from May 21st, 2011 to July 3rd, 2011, and would last 2 months. For the cast, touring was easier for some than others. Kevin, Harry, and Heather were the best at being able to juggle all of it, while Jenna and Leah weren't too far behind because of their Broadway experience. The rest of the cast was having a much harder time dealing with the high scale tour, and that would play into the fact that this would be the last tour, despite the fact that the show would have 6 more seasons to come. So they were supposed to have a month break between the end of production of season 2 and the beginning of tour, but the production ended up falling behind a month. So they only ended up having like 3 days off before flying out to go on tour. There was such little time between the performances that people wouldn't even have time to go to the bathroom. There ended up being a lot of peeing in buckets, and apparently someone between them ended up getting a UTI. According to Kevin McHale, by the end of the tour, everyone hated each other and just wanted to go home. When one girl would cry, all the other girls would start crying. The tour grossed a total of about $5 million, and the second tour grossed somewhere a little under $41 million, bringing the total cost to around $45 million. The second tour was also where the 3D film took place. The movie was filmed between June 16th and 17th, 2011 at the Meadowlands Arena in East Rutherford, New Jersey. Fun fact, the taping wasn't done at their regular concerts, but instead they gave free tickets to a total of 450 fans and arranged them in a way that made it look like they were performing for a full arena. They had blow-up dolls all over the place to make it look fuller. According to the attendees, it felt a lot less like a concert and more like a live taping of a sitcom. The skits were done again and again to get different shots, and some songs as well. They were asked to cheer at different times, and some songs would even be interrupted several times to be shot again. The film was released on August of 2011 and grossed a total of $18.7 million against a $9 million budget. So from that standpoint, the movie was not a total commercial loss, but in terms of expectations, it was a flop. The movie would give us performances of the cast members mostly performing in character, as well as maybe 2 minutes worth of behind the scenes cast, and the rest of the movie just focused on Gleeks telling their story about how Glee changed their lives. Look, I'm just gonna go right out and say it. The movie was pretty disappointing in that sense, where at the time most Gleeks were just desperately looking for more behind the scenes moments with the cast. To this day, people still beg Ryan to release the bloopers of the show, and he still refuses, and I don't know why he won't release them. Apparently something about respecting their arts or blah blah blah, but you know, it's annoying. Come on, release them. Anyway, as touching as the story of those featured were, it wasn't added in the correct space in my opinion. The Glee Project would go on to highlight some of the fans in a much better way, even though the show had its own faults as well. Part of me feels like maybe they didn't release too many behind the scenes moments because the cast were being overworked. Like, can you imagine having to do a full-time job only to have 3 days before you start another equally exhausting and demanding project? The people who attended the taping of the 3D film recall the cast being completely dead between takes, but you know, being very professional as soon as the cameras were rolling again. Those same days, they were actually filming like 3 to 4 takes for all of the songs and skits for the film. They would go on to do actual shows those same nights, and it's just some crazy stuff when you think about it. There were plans to make another film, but after the concert film didn't perform as expected, all those plans were dropped. The cast also put their foot down and refused to go back on tour after season 3, and that was the end of it. Season 3, otherwise known as the false magnum opus of Glee. let's be honest here. Apart from season 5, this was easily the messiest season of Glee. See, season 3 is where Rib's gone, and no offense to the writers, you could instantly feel it. But before we get too much into that, let's talk about what season 3 was about. Season 3 was centered around the senior year of many of the original New Direction members. The season addressed topics like the future, graduation, and the impact of leaving high school. There weren't a lot of things done right, but the imminent pressure of getting it together was really well done in this season. That stress that a lot of seniors get, where they either realize, hey, I'm finally leaving high school and going to explore the world, like Rachel and Kurt, or the in my pants, that's it, like I gotta figure this out now thing that Finn had was very realistic. The seriousness of season 2 was somewhat brought back down, especially post Santana outing. Because of this, the pressure of getting the competition right and placing became center stage again. Not only that, but because for a lot of the seniors it would be their last chance and they really needed to get this right, no pun intended. Add to the fact that they didn't even place at nationals, and with the Trouble Tones formations pre-sectionals, their initial probability was then axed to more than half, so the pressure was on. Season 2 truly established what Glee would become, and so would be better off comparing season 3 to only season 2 as opposed to season 1, not to mention the obvious factor that it's its direct predecessor. The structure of season 2 and season 3 align the most compared to all the other seasons. The 5th episode finally gave us a successful school play. This was also backed by the fact that the high school play drama was stretched over many episodes that led to some pretty big character moments. It was then followed by the yearly mashup episode, then sectionals, then holiday episode, and in between there was also an election and Santana's coming out. After this, the show basically became a love fest mixed with a little drama and the stress of leaving and competing. There was also Will's proposal to Emma and Finn's and Rachel's marriage drama as well. The Valentine's Day episodes of season 3 was the most lovey-dovey episode of the entire season, and honestly, I'm a sucker for it. The Werblers finally became somewhat more of a threat, even though, to be frank, they really just became bullies. All of that loudness and criminality, all for them to not even perform Michael Jackson. But I will say this though, they did bring back that true element of rival groups and being against each other. Season 3A was a complete mess, and I mostly try to block it out. Ian Brennan said on the Showman's podcast that they were trying to give the new writer space, but they weren't always happy with their choices. That's why post sectionals, everything before was dropped in favor of new story arcs. Now, season 3B, on the other hand, was, driven by fan service and laziness. I get why so many people liked season 3 at the time, myself included. Since the ships had become so important in the fandom, the show really gave the fans what they wanted by putting everyone together and pretty much making them stable for the whole season. I can clearly remember Glee Tumblr and the oversaturated GIFs. It's like war flashbacks now. Now, by laziness, what I mean is that the tribute episodes sort of just got silly, and quite frankly, even in the Glee universe was a reflection of Will becoming a little lazy with his lessons. The episodes at this point were just back-to-backs of filler, tribute, then random filler, then tribute, then random filler again. Again, I loved Michael, loved Whitney, loved Saturday Night Gleaver, but it was still just a very obvious cop-out. Also, they weren't exploring them as creatively as they did in, for example, Rumors, which was sort of a silly episode, but it still made its point, and it stood out because it wasn't surrounded by other tribute episodes. But this season, regardless of everything, will always have a special place in the hearts of viewers because it was the last time the show felt like the Glee we knew and loved. We finally got to see them win nationals. It was just a very special moment if you had been following the show, and even if you hadn't been following and you just randomly binged it at one point. Season 3 just always tugs at people's heartstrings, and I think it'll always just have that special place, even though it was a complete mess of a season. The Glee Project was a reality competition show that aired for 2 seasons on the Oxygen Network, with the primary goal of finding new talent for the hit TV show Glee. The contestants on the Glee Project were competing for a multi-episode arc on Glee, offering a unique opportunity for aspiring performers to break into the industry. One of the most appealing aspects of the Glee Project was its diverse cast of contestants. The show featured performers of various backgrounds, ages, and experience levels, reflecting the inclusive nature structure of Glee itself. The diversity provided an opportunity for viewers to connect with contestants on a personal level, rooting for their favorites and following their journey throughout the competition. So the Glee Project also provided a behind-the-scenes look at what it took to be a successful performer on a show like Glee. The contestants were challenged in various aspects of performance, including singing, dancing, and acting, as well as working with industry professionals like Ryan Murphy, the creator of Glee. This insight into the entertainment world was an exciting aspect of the show, offering viewers a unique perspective on the hard work and dedication it required to make it in the industry. However, because there's always one with Glee, the Glee Project was not without its controversies and criticism. One issue that arose during the show's run was the perceived favoritism displayed by the judges towards certain contestants. Some viewers felt like the judges' decision were not always based on merit, but rather on personal preferences or even the potential for creating interesting storylines. Another criticism of the Glee Project was its exploitation. As a reality competition show, there was a certain level of drama and conflict expected, but some viewers felt like the show occasionally crossed the line, putting contestants in emotionally distressing situations for the sake of entertainment. This concern raises questions about the ethics of reality TV in general and the potential harm it can cause to the individuals involved. Despite these criticisms, the Glee Project did lead to the discovery of some genuinely talented performers who went on to have successful careers both on Glee and beyond. Notable examples include Ali Stokes, who would appear on an episode of Glee and win a Tony Award, and Alex Newell, who portrayed Unique Adams. Unlike other competition reality shows, the Glee Project wasn't solely focused on discovering the best singer or dancer, but rather is about finding someone who could inspire Ryan Murphy to write a new character. At the time, the Auction Network had struck a deal with Fox, paying a hefty sum to air episodes of Glee and securing a Glee-based reality series as sort of the package. This deal led to the creation of the show, which was scheduled to air in June of 2011. The casting director, Robert Ulrich, highlighted that the goal was to find someone who could inspire Ryan Murphy, again, to create a unique character. Christopher Orn, the supervising story and producer and editor for the Glee Project, explained that the contestants needed more than just singing talent to stay in the competition. They also needed a compelling story. This emphasis on storytelling was integral to the show's structure, as each week the contestants would record vocals and work on a group routine to capture the essence of Glee. The last chance performances were designed to be dramatic and time efficient, as Ryan Murphy apparently had a busy schedule. Contestants in the bottom three would sing for their lives in front of Ryan Murphy, and choreographer Zach Woodley and director Robert Ulrich, who would then judge the performances in a school-like auditorium setting. After the twist ending in season 1, Oxygen executives made it clear to Murphy that there could only be one winner for season 2. This decision helped to maintain the competitive nature of the show and the anticipation of who would ultimately win the coveted prize, a multi-episode arc on Glee. In conclusion, the Glee Project was an innovative reality competition show that prioritized creative vision and storytelling. Its emphasis on discovering someone who could inspire Ryan Murphy to create a unique character helped set it apart from the talent competitions and captivated audience throughout its 2-season run. Obviously, very problematic in certain aspects, but at this point, everything with Glee is problematic. So, moving on. Most people you ask about Glee will tell you that the show died in season 3 and everything else was just rubbish. And while the following seasons were quite simply a more blatant mess, I wouldn't exactly say that Glee died at the end of season 3. Let me explain. Season 1 of Glee was the only season up until season 6 that didn't take itself seriously, and we'll circle back to season 6 in a moment. But from season 2, there was a clear shift that if you actually paid attention, it was very clear. We were no longer making fun of high schoolers and teachers and stereotypes anymore. We had become the stereotype. We had joined the drama and were actively participating in it, in large part because of us, the fandom. After season 1, we were so loud about what we wanted. Looking back now, we probably unconsciously influenced Rib without them noticing it. And quite frankly, it's so much easier to write a teen drama and cater to the fandom because it's like an easy way to satisfy and keep your audience there. When that happens, though, it destroys the integrity of the story and you end up having the writers needing to keep the story interesting while somehow ensuring the longevity of it, and the best example of that is Blaine. All of this to say is season 4 is easily the most overhated season of the show, for understandable reasons, but it's still unfair. Season 4 is where all the changes that had been happening since season 2 were no longer hidden under the veil of familiarity. This familiarity I speak about: 1, the location; 2, the most obvious one, the characters; and 3, the narrative direction. Despite the other inconsistencies, the first 2 seasons had a cut and placed clarity on the fact that these kids were trying to be the top Glee club of the country. What's the end goal? Nationals. It's a message that is easily mentioned in every single episode up until season 4. Season 4 comes around and we just came down from our big win and everything Glee built itself around. What happens now? What is supposed to happen in a story if it's gotten its quote-unquote happy ending? Season 4 had the hardest challenge of any kind of story to take up. Even though, yes, this is very much a season 4 defense piece, well, at least kind of, we do still need to talk about the big fuck-ups of this season and why it's so hated. So after more than half of our main and most beloved characters left both McKinley and, most importantly, the show, the writers and creators had empty seats to fill. But the issue is, these were not unknown seats they were trying to fill. These were seats that had been personalized for 3 years. And so I bring you Exhibit A, the Rachel Berry seat, whose seat the show would messily and questionably attempt to fill with Marley Rose. Maybe not on purpose, but unfortunately that's how it would be seen. Exhibit B, Quinn and Santana Lopez, whose seats would be filled with Kitty Wilde, whose legs were simply too short to even reach both seats. And the most obvious, the most eye roll, the most lazy one, Noah Puckerman, whose seat filler would become none other than his pop out of nowhere brother, you guessed it, Jake Puckerman. Viewers' reactions to these characters while the episodes was airing was Marley Rose, lame, Kitty Wilde, get away from my screen, and Jake Puckerman, really. Now, that debate people asked about whether the show was about a Glee club or the people in a club would come to an end in the season. Because why are we following Rachel to New York? That's a rhetorical question, but I hope you know where I'm going here. To this day, I personally don't know how good of an idea it was to do the New York split, and maybe it should have ended after season 3, but it didn't. So even though it didn't change the story, it ended up sending a completely different message about what the show, what it was about. Maybe the show would have been better off if Ryan ended up going through with the Rachel, Kurt, and Finn spinoff. The New York ended up completely destroying that aura of small world the show had built itself around. Not to mention that the storylines went too far by Glee standards. Finn kissing Emma was completely disgusting and not necessary. Emma could have simply ran away because you could see how overwhelmed she had gotten. Like, Will literally left her to fend for herself for months. Of course she'd end up losing it. Then there's a shooting, which is the biggest example. I still don't know where the episode fits on the scale of acceptable to completely out of place, but essentially all that episode did was add Glee to the list of teen dramas that attempted to tackle the ramifications of his shooting episode in a span of a week or 2. Above all that though, I think season 4 was still good as I mean, Glee is an entertaining show above everything else. Some seasons are inarguably better than others, but at the end of the day, they're still all watchable in their own rights. Because, first things first, I think it's unfair when people say that Glee turned into a teen drama in season 4, because the drama started season 2, episode 1, minute 0. It was just very well masked by the fact that we knew these people and their characters, hence it was easy to ignore. And again, the writing still maintained a good balance between the two genres, but it had still nonetheless become a teen drama, just not the same ones you'd catch on other channels at the time. The change happened gradually to the point where we simply couldn't ignore it anymore in season 4. The familiarity versus new approach is very defining when it comes to people's acceptance of change. Let's say you get in an argument with a sibling who insults you maybe, or calls you a name, and perhaps it even gets physical. In most case scenario, it's forgotten pretty fast, but then turn around and get insulted or physically assaulted by a stranger, and it's a whole different story. My point is that it's easier to take crap from a person who you know or who's close to you than from a random person you don't know. Our love and familiarity with the OG characters mask the already over-the-top storylines that they were getting thrown into for the sake of a top 40 song. Listen, in season 4's defense, it tried to change a lot of things and actually fix certain things that fans had berated the show's creators for, most notably Rachel being a teacher's pet. That one was pretty much served to us on a silver platter. They also tried to go in a different direction with Marley because all people did was complain about how annoying Rachel was as a lead, but then it backfired because everyone thought that she was super lame. The writers did a really good job at capturing the innocence you need the characters to have at the start of their stories. Granted, they ended up doing it much better in season 6, but they still did it well this season. It was just masked by the constant mixing between the alums and the seniors. Even though I don't think the New York split was a good idea, it was done really well as they were able to link most of the storylines between New York and Lima. In season 1, Vocal Adrenaline were the real scary rivals, and up until this season, I would say that the Warblers never seemed like a legitimate threat. Yeah, they became full-fledged villains in season 3, Sebastian mostly, but you can't watch performances like Stand and think for a second that they would have won regionals. And yes, I know the New Directions mostly just move around, but they also managed to somewhat switch the mood up. The Warblers just always gave preppy until they started taking performance enhancements and performing in a more badass way. Regardless of whether Marley fainted or not, I highly doubt they would have won that sectionals, not because they were bad, but simply because the Warblers were undeniably better this time. All this to say, it was a smart move to have them lose sectionals and have Finn fight to keep the Glee Club going. It just added to the comedy of having people like Tina serenade Blaine in a locker room and then promptly turn down with a bunch of students returning from what I would assume was PE class. Also, people complained about the Will and Sue rivalry being tired, which I never agreed with, but the writers ended up giving Sue and Finn that rivalry, which I also thought was really good. The music selection this season was also fire. It was common knowledge by this point that they would bend the plot backwards and forwards in order to fit whatever top 40 song they wanted to capitalize on, but this season went back and we ended up having a bunch of 90s and early 2000s hit, which actually ended up giving this season a very distinct feel. We got less show tunes, less classic rock, and less top 40. I will say this though about the musical numbers. They got so lazy that for most episodes they would just throw a random musical number at the end just for the sake of having another song, and then they would also have the New York folks doing it too. Again, at this point, all attempts to conceal the song choices as anything other than random was just dropped. I honestly believe that season 4 gets overhated. I do get some of it. For one, this is where Glee made the switch from shooting on film to digital during the transition between season 2 and season 4. This change in technology significantly impacted the look and feel of the show. I define the 4th season as the era of redistributing the cards. If you didn't notice the changes before Glee, you would now. We came back and Shu suddenly looked like he had aged 10 years. Same with Corey, who wouldn't have been able to convincingly play a high schooler any longer. Not that 19 years old was believable. You get my point. Unfortunately, the bads of this season were just much louder than the goods, and because of that, this season remains the most unfairly hated season of Glee. I don't need to spend 5,000 years here. I know it's kind of my thing to defend the indefendable, but season 5 of Glee can kick rocks because I won't even attempt to justify the hot mess that was this season. Where season 4, if the Lima story got bad, the New York one was sometimes better and vice versa. This season lacked the very basic fallback cushion that is a split storyline. It was bad all around. I mean, where do I even begin? This season was like watching the slow, agonizing death of a beautiful thing that was touched far longer than it should have been and completely lost its shine. It's the combination of all the flaws that had been building up throughout the years, bursting at the seams. And while some disasters are so bad you can't even look away, I would counter that and say that this disaster was so bad you had to look away. This season was defined by the character's grieving process following Finn's death, which impacted the Goose dynamic and individual storylines. This part of the season continued the New York Lima split, while the second half primarily took place in New York following the lives of Rachel, Kurt, Santana, and the others. The themes included grief, friendship, and the challenges of the entertainment industry. Look, I know I said that season 4 started off with everything stacked up against it, and I truly believe they decently pushed back against all of the obstacles, but the beatdown that season 5 got was one that the show just couldn't recover from. The passing of Corey Monteith. Sure, Finn may not have been people's favorites, but the connection to the passing of the real life actor casted a dark cloud over the show that would simply just never go away. Also, the things behind the scenes were also becoming more strained, but since it involves real people and not characters, I don't want to speculate. All I can say is that the actors' sentiments and whatever was going on behind the scenes started to seep into the show. The actors tend to talk about when they emotionally shut down. And on the Showman's podcast, Kevin had said that What Does the Fox Say was his breaking point. And you know what? I kind of agree. The end of Twerk definitely caused enough damage, but the Muppet Master episode was the final nail in the coffin for me. Then on the New York side, there was that god-awful Santana-Rachel feud that sure was realistic, but it's still some of the worst parts of the season. Rachel's entire Funny Girl arc felt both undeserved, uncompelling, and very premature, given that canonically a year ago she had just graduated high school. Because the New Yorkification of the show was so poorly received, they had to figure out a way to go back to Lima, and so they made Rachel quit her dream job that she had been yapping about since the first few episodes, also she could flop and restart the Glee Club, which had unfortunately been permanently shut down because they lost nationals, which can I just say that was one of the most annoying and unrealistic parts of the show? Like, how are you going to shut down a club because they aren't number one in the country? They probably went further than a lot of other clubs in the school. They were second place and had become national champs the year before. Also, the absurdity with Sue becoming principal after being fired for shooting is so very ridiculous and annoying. And Figgins becoming a janitor, really? Also, I realized that I completely skipped Figgins, who is the hilariously cheap McKinley High School principal. He participated in some of the best and funniest scenes on the show, especially with Sue and Will. I hated that he became a janitor, and it wasn't funny to me at all. Not because of the position itself, but because it killed that funny, questionable power dynamic he had with Sue. To put it simply, season 5 was such a mess that if you were a diehard fan, it was heartbreaking to watch. I stayed through it because my heart was in it and I cared about these characters, but a lot of my friends had quit and I couldn't really blame them. One thing about season 6 is it often gets lumped with seasons 4 and 5, but that never made sense to me. I would go as far as to say that the season most comparable to season 6 is actually season 1. One standout feature of the season was a successful return to its satirical roots, kind of. Glee began as a playful critique of high school dramas, gleefully twisting the cliches of popular singing contests. Over time, it morphed into the very thing it was initially parodying, losing some of its original charm. Season 6, however, reignited the initial spark of satire, transforming not just the high school drama of it all, but also its previous self into the object of its playful critique. The injection of self-aware humor added a freshness that was sorely needed. In a move that made both narrative and emotional sense, the focus shifted back to Lima at the heart of Glee and away from the convoluted Lima-New York divide from the prior seasons. This, coupled with the departure of the less beloved newbies, except for Kitty and Unique, streamlined the narrative and brought back the story to its core. We saw a cartoonishly extreme Sue Sylvester running rampant as a principal, a scenario which was as hilarious as it was absurd. Rachel and Kurt, two central pillars of the Glee Club, spearheaded the revival of the club, recruiting students with the help of the former club members. This new crop of students were better received by fans, partly due to the reminiscent portrayal in the style of season 1, and partly due to them being kept largely in the background, allowing viewers to focus on our beloved original characters. Glee's season 6 didn't shy away from tying up loose ends, focusing on giving its characters satisfying conclusions. Each storyline is thoughtfully conceived and targeted towards an older audience, reflecting the characters' growths and evolution. The series also unabashedly addressed its own history. A highlight included Sue locking Kurt and Blaine in an elevator only to release them once they rekindled their love. This over-the-top scenario humorously commented on the intensity of Glee's fan base and served as a fitting tribute to the show's enthusiastic shippers. Glee season 6 celebrated its victories. We witnessed an openly gay kid who faced zero bullying, which was a stark contrast from the experiences of characters like Kurt and Santana in the earlier season. Now, I probably sound like I'm saying that season 6 of Glee was perfect, but I'm not. I think the good from season 6 easily outweighed the bad. Ryan Murphy said that they had a checklist in the writer's room about what fans wanted to see, and so they were just checking them off as they went along in the season. It led to some pretty unbelievable things, like Santana agreeing to the double wedding. Like, that that would never happen. But essentially, I respect the general direction they decided to go back in. They decided to make fun of the show itself and what it had become. It was almost like a full-fledged cartoon. I mean, cars blowing up, hounds being released in school hallways, head shaving, locking characters in a made-up elevator. And it worked because once again, Glee wasn't trying to be serious anymore. It was embracing the show for what it had become, the good and the bad, by returning to its roots but still acknowledging everything that happened. The way Will and Sue acted this season was easily one of my favorite parts. I know people hate William, but his acting this season was unmatched. The final countdown was a perfect scene to reflect how the show had come full circle with how it tackled things. It's clear that the show, despite its fluctuations in its quality and tone, had a lasting impact. It not only transformed the television landscape with its unique blend of music, drama, and comedy, but it also forged new paths in the representation of marginalized groups and issues. The first few seasons of Glee presented an unapologetically satirical looks at the ups and downs of high school life, bolstered by a soundtrack of catchy covers and the sheer ambition of its characters. Later seasons shone a spotlight on characters' complex sexuality struggles. Kurt's exploration of his gay identity amid a conservative town was a striking portrayal of the difficulties faced by many LGBTQ+ youths. Similarly, Santana's journey of self-acceptance offered a heartfelt look at the complexities of coming out. These stories resonated with viewers worldwide and marked Glee as a trailblazer in the LGBTQ+ representation on network television. However, the season didn't always strike the right chord. In subsequent seasons, the plot lines grew more convoluted and less engaging. The introduction of new characters and split between Lima and New York were met with mixed reaction from fans. However, the show still had its moments, such as continued exploration of its original character stories and the consistent representation of diversity. Season 6 proved to be a redemptive finale. It harked back to the show's satirical origins with a twist. Now the satire extended to the show itself. The season showed a keen self-awareness, recognizing its missteps and employing them as material for humor. It stripped away the less successful elements of the previous seasons and revived the charm of the original. It also offered an evolved perspective of the societal progress. This farewell season encapsulated the essence of what made Glee unique while addressing the changes it underwent over the years. It's unfortunate some characters' futures were left vague, such as Santana. There's also a huge chunk of it that's surprisingly aged very poorly. The show had a lot, and I mean a lot of issues. Some characters were prioritized over others. Even though it claimed to be progressive, there are a lot of things that looking back now were very far from it, most notably the outing of Santana or the constant transphobic jokes at the expense of Unique. But ultimately, Glee was a show that dared to be different. Its musical format, the depth of its character, and its willingness to tackle important social issues set it apart in the television landscape. Despite its inconsistency, it opened the door for more inclusive storytelling, prompting audiences to engage with diverse characters and narratives they might not have otherwise encountered. The show's legacy remains evident in that many musical dramas that followed in its wake, proving that even if the music has stopped, the influence continues to echo. It was a series that gave a voice to the underdog, offered solace to the lonely, and inspired many to keep pressing forwards, reminding us all that being part of something special truly does make us special. And at the end of the day, regardless of what anyone says, I know that Glee's heart was always in the right place. And as a Gleek, you'll understand why they say that no one hates Glee more than Gleeks, but no one loves Glee more than Gleeks as well. That is it for this video. This was a very, very long video. If you made it this far, give yourself a pat on the back because this was long. I hope you enjoyed this video. And yeah, feel free to share your opinions down below. I hope you know the difference between my personal opinions and what I stated as fact on the show. Not everything I'm saying is actually factual, and I tried to make sure that I said in my opinion when it was my opinion. So I hope people know the difference. But in general, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what your opinions are down below. Obviously, I couldn't mention every single, aspect or fact of the show, but I think I covered pretty much enough that even someone who's never seen the show would be able to get a very, very good understanding of the show. But anyway, yeah, please let me know what you thought down below. Please give this video, engagement, like, comment, subscribe if you like my content, and just, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.